95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester, an Odyssey sports station.
It's time to start the show and talk about the sports we saw. Inside jokes and takes from Danger and Battaglia. Bills and the Sabres and the Amherst. Who gave a microphone to these jerks? Gene's a big timer, a social misfit. Clueless to the title of the biggest buskeg hits. Chuck Munchie's goons have the last say. So thanks for your time, Mr. Mayo. Danger likes his cold ones and he likes his bears. But this is Rochester, cute Francesa.
Oh, who cares?
He's critical of Sean, he's critical of Alan. Of course he married Sandy, cause she's Italian. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. With Danger and Battaglia.
A very good day to you as we welcome you on into Rochester's only local sports talk show. You found the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia, and we appreciate you listening along at 95.7 FM, AM 950, the free-to-download Odyssey app. You can even watch the Sports Bar video stream up on our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester, also streaming on Twitch at The Fan Rochester. And you can hear us on your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. How are you, Gino?
I remember, like, when Dave Letterman, I was a Letterman guy watching, and then when he moved to his new studio, everyone always complained about how cold it was.
When he moved to CBS from NBC?
At the Ed Sullivan Theater.
That's right.
We have the opposite problem here at The Fan here. Our new studio, Danger. It's like, wait a second, the heat isn't on, but what is going on with the circulation?
Little toasty.
Yeah,
little toasty
here.
in here. So we leave the door open, and maybe we'll get some air to come in and circulate. And look, this isn't like a new thing in our building. It's an old building. And if you've ever come to the studios at High Falls, I think we have people from out of town in today in our offices, and they walk around and they're like, wow, this is really cool. Exposed brick. It's a really kind of environment that appears conducive to creativity, and I would agree with that. And a lot of times, because it's an old building, some studios are cold, some studios are hot, the ventilation isn't perfect. I know there are some days where if you're in my office upstairs on the second floor, it can be freezing cold. It could also be scorching hot, right? And it just so happens that we're in a studio now for some reason. We're not really getting any air in here. Like the thermostat on the wall but that's not the biggest. The thermostat on the wall isn't even on. I don't even know. Like it got disconnected or something. The bigger issue is that we don't have our TV today. Let's be honest. I mean, the bigger issue is
I was working my way to that. Wait a second. How is the TV not working? We just put that up.
Do we think Dan didn't do something right, or Dan got something mixed up? I mean, it was working fine when we left here yesterday.
Who was in last night? Well, there was a Sabre game last night. Mm-hmm. Did anybody mess around with this? Was somebody watching a movie?
Are there ghosts in the machine?
Yeah.
Are there ghosts in the machine? No matter. I mean, we're fine. We're comfortable. We're going to power through the afternoon here on the Fan Rochester. We're glad you're along for the ride, and we have a great show lined up for you. We're going to talk some World Series baseball with Jim Riley, our buddy from the Barreled Up podcast at Ball Cap Sports. The Odyssey exclusive Barreled Up podcast. He stops by the Sports Bar at 425.
Yeah, Yankee fans, you got to be fired up, right? Like, and even if you're not a Yankee fan, you have to be fired up if you're a baseball fan. Maybe they're not your teams. Maybe you're a Red Sox fan, but you have to recognize what this is going to do for this sport. And the question I have for Jim is, hey, the NLCS drew a good number, despite the fact that all those games are bad. They were all blowouts.
Yeah.
Could we actually get some good baseball? Or are the Dodgers just kind of built in a way that they're just going to mosh on you, and then when they're going to a bullpen game, maybe it's not their night, and we get another 6-game series where nothing is close? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about some of these off-season issues, and we've got these unsettled situations also in Sacramento and also Tampa.
Yeah. Well, he's got his finger on the pulse, and he talks to a lot of insiders throughout the league. So Jim Riley of the Barreled Up podcast will be stopping by. We'll talk some World Series and other Major League Baseball affairs coming up later on this afternoon in the Sports Bar. Later this hour, let's get some winners. We'll be joined by the host of Send It In on the BetQL Network and Odyssey Sports betting insider, PJ Glasser, with his favorite plays from college and pro football this weekend and insider calls presented by BetMGM. Go check out all the latest lines today on the BetMGM app.
It's Wednesday here in the Sports Star.
I see what you did there.
It's a sneaky good game, Navy Notre Dame.
Right?
Does that feel like a de facto playoff game?
Kind of does.
Yeah, because if you're Notre Dame and I don't know. Certainly for Navy. If Navy loses this one, I don't know if they get in with one loss.
Agreed. But they've been impressive. Army has been impressive, obviously, and we'll get PJ's take on what kind of a threat Navy may pose to Notre Dame this weekend. And, of course, we'll talk some NFL as well. We'll talk Bills and Seahawks and get his lean on the Bills as they travel to the Pacific Northwest on Sunday. So PJ Glasser stops by here in about 20 minutes or so. We can take your calls at any point this afternoon. You want to pull up a stool and join us. That number is 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326. We're also on Elon's Twitter. That's X, @TheFanRochester, if you want to engage with us there. We're happy to read your tweets as well.
I was trying to figure out, normally you don't get breaking news in sports in the 6 a.m. hour, but we had that today with the Hopkins trade. Now, it became official there, and there was some contract stuff. I was figuring, why? Oh, I get it. You're Kansas City, even though it's the Raiders. You really need the DeAndre Hopkins to beat the Raiders? The answer is no. Chiefs are going there, and if they are who they are, they should win this game. And I would expect actually that to be a very pro-Kansas City atmosphere coming up at Allegiant Stadium on Sunday. But I can understand why they want to get Hopkins in there as soon as possible. So rather than waste another day, get the, as Sean McDermott would call it, onboarding process, and you get Hopkins in there. To me, though, if you're giving up a mid-round pick, a fifth, could be a fourth, it's just a flyer at this point.
Well, I think what Hopkins can be for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2024 is probably similar to what MVS was for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2022. I don't think you're going to get the DeAndre Hopkins that we all remember. And I was trying to think, when was the last time DeAndre Hopkins had a standout game or made a play that, you just remember? It's been a while, right? We all remember the Hail Murray when he was still with Arizona. And since then, obviously, now playing with the Titans, didn't do anything last week against the Bills. In fact, more sulking on the sideline than making plays on the field. And it was pretty clear he didn't want to be a part of whatever Tennessee was throwing out there. What does he have left? I think he probably has something left to offer. Otherwise, Kansas City wouldn't have an interest in him. And Patrick Mahomes is certainly an upgrade than Mason Rudolph or Will Levis.
Yeah, it's funny. And I think part of it is because do we care or pay any attention to Tennessee Titan football as we do other teams? Hopkins did go off a few games last year. The one I do remember, he had 3 touchdowns, 128 yards in a win over Atlanta, a back-and-forth game. That was the game where, maybe there is something to Will Levis. It was this time last year, 140 yards against the Colts last year. That Monday night game in Miami. Do you remember that one where, wait a second, the Dolphins are going to win the division? No, they're not. Here comes crummy Tennessee. 7 catches, $124 and a touchdown. So we saw him pop, and maybe it's just the 1,000-yard season doesn't mean as much anymore because he posted 1,000 yards with Tennessee last year. But I'm watching him.
That's funny. That stats is staggering to me.
Yeah.
If you told me that he had a 1,000-yard receiving season last year with Tennessee, I'd say you're lying.
No, 75 catches, 1,057 yards, 7 touchdowns.
So that right there, I look, he's not what he was. We all see it. We all recognize it. I know some people will say, he's washed. He's not fast. Can't do it. But just knowing that he had 1,000 yards just last year in that situation with that awful quarterback situation that Tennessee had last season and this season, I tend to believe there might be something there. Can he separate the way he used to? Of course not. He's not going to be as fast. But if you're Patrick Mahomes and you're throwing up prayers, can he go up and get it? Yeah, I think that's probably what's left in his game.
Okay. Compare this to last year where Kansas City was, where they were relying on a knucklehead named Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney lining up in the wrong spot. To the point where, okay, it's a Super Bowl. I don't care if you're talented or not. You're not here. You're at least bringing in a pro. But I think our eyes tell us, at least watching Hopkins this past week. In fact, I'll credit Johnny Boxspring for texting me this. He texted me during the game. Hey, is he trying to get traded? Well, if he was, credit DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, there's also something funny about this move when you look at Kansas City and their roster as it exists right now. If you went back 7 seasons, if you went back to the 2017 season, at this point of the season, the leading rusher in the NFL was
2017 season?
Mm-hmm. The leading rusher in the NFL at this point of the 2017 season was on the Kansas City Chiefs roster. His name was Kareem Hunt. Leading wide receiver, leading tight end, leading receiver for in the tight end group, more receptions than any other tight end at the time was Travis Kelce. And the leading receiver in the NFL in the 2017 season at this time was a player named DeAndre Hopkins.
Okay. That's
what you basically have done here, if you're Kansas City, is you've brought back a super roster from 7 seasons ago. What do they have left? That's what remains to be seen. But I look at it, and if you're in Kansas City, you probably view, if you're a Chiefs fan, you probably view it very similar to how we view the Amari Cooper deal. It's a low-risk, potentially high-reward move. I don't think there's any harm in bringing in DeAndre Hopkins. I think Cooper Kupp would have been a better fit.
Cooper Kupp would have been like, oh, no.
You're right.
That would have been our like, hey, I'll see your Cooper. Excuse me, your Cooper, and I'm going to bring in Cooper Kupp. That would have had us kind of nervous. To me, I don't even think this is matching Amari Cooper. I think DeAndre Hopkins at this point, I would put Amari Cooper ahead of him. I just rattled off these stats he had last year, but let's be honest, Tennessee was not a good football team, and they're throwing. They were 6-11 last year. They're throwing from behind, so sometimes those numbers get skewed. But on the other hand, this was a glaring need for Kansas City, and it wouldn't surprise me in all danger if this was not the end for the Chiefs, that maybe they also bring in Cooper Kupp. Because if they're being honest with themselves, the way you beat Baltimore is this. And I thought about this. You got to just get up on top first. That's really what it is. And when Sean McDermott punted on that opening drive, and like, no, don't do that. You have to score points. You have to kind of take Derrick Henry and that offense and put him in a different mode. And to me, if you're Kansas City, I know they play. The Chiefs are great for many reasons, but one of them being they can beat you in many different ways. I don't think that's the case this year. I think Baltimore's so good running the ball and being physical that you got to win a different way.
It's funny. If you watch the game Monday night, Tampa did just that. But here's where Tampa made a mistake. Instead of going for touchdowns, they kicked a field goal. Instead of going up 14-0, they went up 10-0.
And then they're turning the ball over.
And then, of course, you have to play perfectly as well. If you're going to beat a good team like Baltimore or Kansas City, you have to play mistake-free. And Baker obviously made some mistakes that cost his team and changed the momentum of that game. So that's just a move. And there's still just under 2 weeks to go before we get to the NFL's trade deadline. And I would anticipate that there will be more moves. Like, speaking of Tampa, what's your move? Because I think you have 3 healthy receivers on your roster. Are you going to make a move for one of these guys? And I know a lot of people will say guys like Deontay Johnson. I don't know that Deontay Johnson is on the market. We don't know whether or not Carolina is going to move on from that after a short experiment. Cooper Kupp, of course, the reports are out there. Is a second-round pick too rich for a team like Tampa Bay's blood? For a receiver who can't stay on the field, who can't play a full season? These are the dilemmas of an NFL GM, and I really don't know if Cooper Kupp is going to go for that second rounder that they seem to be throwing out there.
Heck, if I'm why are you saying second rounder, first rounder? Like if he shows up on Thursday night, like, hey, here's what he can look like.
We're buying ourselves a draft pick, is what they're saying. Yeah. We'll eat the salary of Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
We just want a high draft pick, and we'll see if there's a team that bites on that. But whereas Cooper Kupp to Kansas City, I think would have had us all as fans sitting up a little bit more straight today. DeAndre Hopkins to me was a move. It was a necessary move if you're the Chiefs, but it's not a move that I just view as like, okay, well, that's it. Now they're back. I don't know. I need to see that first, and maybe the real expectation is there that Hopkins can free up Kelsey a little bit more, or make some of the other receivers, like in Buffalo with Amari Cooper, a little bit more easy for Patrick Mahomes to find with separation.
Yeah, it's funny how these teams right now, and maybe Tennessee did this in part, Danger, it's kind of like a secret tank, meaning, okay, they don't have a quarterback. They're one of these teams, Cleveland, flipping their wide receiver. I'm looking at all these last-place teams. I'm looking for teams that should just kind of be honest with themselves and say, all right, time to sell here. Okay, well, let's look at the last-place teams, the Patriots, but I don't know if there's anything you want on that roster. The Browns have already done that. The Titans have already done that. The Raiders did that with, the Adams. You go over to the other conference, we're talking about the Panthers, we're talking about the Rams. The NFC North is an aberration. They're great, all the teams there. And your Bears, last place at 4-2, unbelievable. What division did they leave out? What about the Giants? Shouldn't they be sellers? Why don't we hear about the Giants at this point selling? It just leads me to think, maybe they're not, because their GM doesn't feel exactly safe, and nor should their head coach at this point.
Yeah, I get the sense that that's going to be it for Shane and Daboll after this season. I mean, I believed it going into the season. I didn't like what I saw in the offseason out of Hard Knocks. They look like a dysfunctional organization. Hard Knocks didn't do them any favors. Let's just put it that way. And then some of these moves, I'm going to see Saquon Barkley do what he did against the Giants, has to be a bitter pill for the Mara family to swallow when you see how that all played out just last week. So
when you do it, hey fans, here's what you missed there.
Yeah, that's right. I just think that's a rough scene. And are they going to be sellers? Should they be sellers? Yeah. What exactly are you moving on from? Are you trying to make a trade for what? I mean, who are you? The Giants to me are very much like the Patriots. It's like, okay. I mean, the Patriots moved on from Judon. That was basically them selling before the season even started.
Good point.
Their best player.
You can always call us 866-4FAN 866-4326. Chris in Rochester, what's up, buddy?
Hey, how's it going?
How are you,
great
bud?
show, guys.
Thank you.
Hey, so this is a fun time of the year, just see where the great players are going to land on terrible teams. But if Detroit had any emphasis on trying to shore up that defense after Aiden Hutchinson went down, why are they not being in the market for like a Myles Garrett or somebody like that?
That's interesting.
You know what I mean?
Myles Garrett is a name that's been thrown out there, and if you're Cleveland and you're moving on from Myles Garrett,
that's a problem. It's weird. Cleveland at 1-6. Part of me doesn't want, of all the teams that are in last place, that's the one team. I'm like, I don't know. I want to see it with Winston this week.
Yeah,
like,
you're still a believer.
Yeah,
we heard today out of Cleveland that Kevin Stefanski is going to cede play calling to Ken Dorsey.
Hey.
Ken Dorsey will now be the offensive play caller for the Cleveland Browns with famous Jameis as your starting quarterback. Chris, thanks for the call.
It's funny, like how people will say they'll complain about Brady and then they will cite Brian Daboll, which is like we just kind of skipped over the Ken Dorsey era of play calling in Buffalo. The Bills, by the way, have put out their injury report. Josh Allen, by the way, still listed on the injury report, left hand, for what it's worth. Full participant today. Terrell Bernard, boy, this is a unique injury designation. Ankle/pectoral/personal. A DNP. He was excused for personal reasons, but that ankle is a little bit of a concern, and because he wasn't even in the building today, I can't tell you much about that. Daquan Jones, veterans rest, no big deal. Dawson Knox with an ankle did not practice. Curtis Samuel with a pec did not practice, and DeJuan Smoot not practicing with a groin, limited today. Dorian Williams, that's a good sign. Dalton Kincaid with a collarbone, limited. Taron Johnson, limited. Also limited Mac Hollins and DeMar Hamlin, as well as Dwayne Carter with various ailments. So that's a pretty full list of injuries.
You know what?
There.
I know you're talking injuries, but just because you mentioned his name and we're talking about the trade deadline, Bill should try and get something for Curtis Samuel. Do you think anybody would take if the Bills? How would you work that out where you could get anything in return for Curtis Samuel? Get on the phone with Tampa Bay, work something out.
That would be a stretch, right? You would be eating the money.
What is he doing? I mean, what are they doing with him? It just isn't. There's nothing there.
I don't know if there's nothing there or he's just an understudy, meaning you have a slot guy. And actually, you kind of have two. Number one being, actually, you have three if you want to count Kincaid, okay? Samuel is the end around. He's not the deep vertical threat that the Bills were thinking. Like, I always thought, okay, they're bringing him in. We're going to showcase him a different way. And no, that's not really it. He's not going to win on the sideline. He's not really separating all that much.
And he's injured now.
And he's injured.
And what is his injury? I wonder if his injury feels better if he gets traded to another team.
No, because he left that game, so this is a legit injury with the shoulder.
This is the shoulder.
So, like,
injury.
he got injured. I want to say in the third quarter, didn't come back. It's like, all right.
Well, it's a long and lengthy injury list, so we'll keep tabs on here throughout the course of the week, and we'll not only talk Bills, Seahawks from the Bills' point of view for the rest of this week. We also will get some Seahawks coverage as well, as our buddy from the Locked On Seahawks podcast is scheduled to join us tomorrow afternoon here in the Sports Bar. That's Corbin Smith.
That is the one team. Since we've been like kind of doing this show, I don't have my finger on the pulse here. Honestly,
I tell you, Seattle might as well be its own country. Like, it feels so isolated and hard to get to, yet magnificent. Like, nobody ever says anything bad about life in Seattle. It just feels like it's its own place. Like, it's its own. They have their own reality and they're their own country because of how isolated they are and kind of detached from everything else.
My initial thought, and I reserve the right to change, so I'm not moving any goalposts, but here's my initial thought on this game. It's a game where, all right, if the Bills are healthy and the Bills do what they're supposed to do, they should win this game. I think we all can kind of agree, but okay. Tell me about the health of linebackers. I can't tell you. Like, the middle linebacker wasn't there today. Dorian Williams. Are you feeling all that confident? So that's where I would start with that conversation. My concern number two is, does Leslie Frazier know where the bodies are buried when it comes to how to defend Josh Allen? I think that is a big concern. We kind of joke about the revenge game, and when we're saying, well, I would think that Leslie Frazier, as defensive coordinator, would know. Okay, here's what we need to do against Josh Allen in this game.
Yeah. Well, if that's the case, then just run the ball. Lots of Ray Davis, lots of James Cook. Stop that. I mean, out physical the Seahawks, beat them in the physical game.
That might be the case.
We'll get to PJ Glasser next. He is the host of Send It In on the BetQL Network. You can hear him in the free-to-download Odyssey app. You can watch the BetQL Network on YouTube and on Twitch as well. PJ will give us his favorite plays from this weekend's action in college and pro football next on the Fan Rochester.
Sports Update.
It's a lengthy injury report for the Buffalo Bills. Highlighted the fact that the middle linebacker Terrell Bernard excused today for personal reason. Bernard also dealing with ankle and pectoral injuries. Also not practicing today, wide receiver Curtis Samuel and DeJuan Smoot. Daquan Jones, defensive tackle, was given a Veterans Day of rest. For this matchup against Seattle, Sean McDermott says the D-line is key.
True every week. Every week it's a must. You know, that's how the game is. That's where the game is won every week, up front and defensive line, offensive line. You know, being great with our technique, being great with the strain. You know, you talk about their defensive line. They've got some guys that can flat out rush the passer, and very impressed by the tape.
Kansas City trading for DeAndre Hopkins. It's a fifth-round pick, could become a fourth. Got the Amerks tonight. They take on Cleveland. Gene Battaglia on the Sports Leader, the Fan, Rochester.
Neat or on the rocks? It's the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
We're joined now by the host of Send It In, the BetQL Network, Odyssey Sports betting insider PJ Glasser. Insider calls are presented by BetMGM. Go check out all the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. PJ, always great to have you on with us. Always great to get some wins after we talked to you on a Wednesday, as Gene has dubbed it. You gave us Georgia, you gave us Maryland last weekend. Looking forward to finding out and picking your brain about what you think about Saturday's action. And Texas and Vanderbilt is a game that we have highlighted. See exactly what Texas does to rebound from that loss to Georgia. How are you, Pete?
Wait, can I do the PJ thing?
Don't insult our guest right out of the game. You're going to insult our guest right out of the game.
No. I'm like, Danger, great to be with you guys. Gene, I love Texas in a bounce-back spot. PJ, how are you today? I'm not insulting you, am I?
Guys, I don't even know why you have me on the show. Gene's got me down. I mean, it's pretty good. Nah, good to be with you guys, man. We were, Georgia came through for us last week, but we're going to be on Texas this week against Vandy. You know, for all the reasons that everybody loved Texas last week against Georgia. You know, a lot of people feel like they have the best offensive line in the country, all the weapons that they have at receiver. Their defense has been excellent this season. I mean, look, we got Georgia as a dog last week. You know, like, regardless of who they were going to play, Georgia was going to show up and they were going to look really, really good. But because of how great Vandy's been as an underdog this year, they beat Bama outright, they beat Kentucky outright, they beat Virginia Tech outright, they played Missouri really tough. I mean, they've been great in this spot all season, and now everybody sees Vandy with another big number, getting 18.5. But, you know, as good as some of these other teams are, guys, Texas is going to be the best team that they've played, and they're getting Texas off of a loss. They're getting them, you know, off of a bad performance against Dogs last week. So I like Texas. Anything under 3 touchdowns, you know, I'd take them up to 20.5. I'd lay it with the Longhorns this week. I think they bounce back in a big way.
We got another one of these conference games in name only, I suppose. Feels weird here, but Indiana, I don't know what to make of this Indiana team. You get Washington coming in. PJ, is this a game where you can find some value? How would you play this?
I like the Huskies, guys, and this is just one of those games, and it's so tough to do when you're betting, right? Because last week Indiana was laying 6.5 against Nebraska, and for anybody that took Nebraska, I mean, the last thing you want to do is come back the very next week and fade this Indiana team that's been an absolute wagon. I mean, they're 6-1 against the spread. They're 7-0 straight up. Their quarterback's not going to be playing this week, Curtis Rourke, so they're going to go with their backup, Taven Jackson, which is why this line is under the 7. I just think, you know, last week a lot of smart people were looking to fade Indiana because their schedule was a little bit soft. They thought Nebraska off of a bye week with a very good defense was the game to fade them. Well, Indiana beats them by like 50, and now nobody's going to want to fade them again. It just feels like the perfect storm, though, this week because, guys, I love when it's like everybody's looking forward to fading a team, and it feels like everybody's in on that game. And then it doesn't work out, and then the very next week, everybody's out on it, right? It feels like nobody wants to come back with Washington this week. College game days in Bloomington this year. It reminds me very similar to last year when Curt Cignetti, who's the head coach at Indiana, was at JMU last season. The Dukes were undefeated. College game day goes to Harrisonburg, Virginia, and then they lose outright to Appalachian State. It was their only loss all year in the regular season. And now here we go again with a Curt Cignetti team undefeated. College game day's coming. Everybody's starting to talk about what potentially could be for the Hoosiers down the road. Big Ten title game, college football playoff. They have a road trip to Ohio State coming up in the middle of November. Washington, I know they have 3 losses on the season, but they're a solid team. They got a good running game. Their defense is pretty good as well. I think they can keep that game close, guys, and I'd maybe take some money line as well.
All right, we got a big test ahead for the midshipmen. Navy still undefeated, and Notre Dame the opponent this weekend. PJ, which direction are you leaning here?
Yeah, I mean, what a great story these military academies are, right? Navy and Army both undefeated. Again, Navy guys, even though they haven't lost a game this year, like, who have they played? I mean, it's been Bucknell, it's been Temple, it's been Tulsa, it's been Charlotte. I mean, they're just playing a bunch of nobodies. And now you're getting Notre Dame, who's one of the best defenses in the country. Reason I love this game, guys, I'll never forget it. I was watching a Navy-Notre Dame game a couple years ago, in Marcus Freeman's first year with the Irish as head coach. And on the broadcast, they talked about how when Marcus Freeman was defensive coordinator at Cincinnati, one of the years his defenses gave up 500 yards of total offense to Navy. And they were talking about how Marcus Freeman never forgot that game. It always scarred him. And he always takes it personal whenever he goes up against Navy. Well, now he gets to go up against Navy again. His defense, 2 of the last 3 years, has given up 6 points and 3 points to Navy offense. And it's a big game, obviously. I mean, they're undefeated. Notre Dame cannot afford to lose this game, or else they're going to be out of the playoff with a loss to Northern Illinois and Navy. So I just think it's such a step up in class for Navy. I think they're going to have a tough time scoring on this Notre Dame defense. They're going to have their full attention. And ever since that game against Cincinnati when Freeman was the defensive coordinator, he's always made sure that he's had his teams ready to go up against the triple option. So give me Notre Dame. Navy's going to be a trendy underdog on Saturday. I think it's fool's gold. I like the Irish.
We're talking to PJ Glass, your host of Send It In on the BetQL Network. How about another team that is undefeated? I don't know if they're good or not, PJ. That would be BYU. Now, you look at their resume so far. Okay, they've beaten a couple ranked teams, SMU by 3. They beat K-State. They beat Baylor. But now they go to Central Florida. BYU 7-0. UCF is 3-4. But yet, BYU is getting the points here. This looks too good to be true. Am I reading this correctly? What are your thoughts here on BYU against UCF?
Not at all, Gene. I mean, you just said the handicap right there. Not only is BYU 7-0 straight up this season, they're 7-0 against the spread. They're the number 11 team in the country going up against unranked and 3-4 UCF. And they're underdogs. This line opened at BYU -2.5, and now it's swung midweek to UCF being the favorite. And we know that that's professional money coming in on UCF. Sometimes, guys, it's just really simple, and you just trust the line movement, and the line kind of tells you who's going to win the game. Don't overthink this one. Take UCF. BYU, I mean, they're not going to cover every single spread. They're not going to win every single game. I think odds makers and the professionals are kind of telling you that this game on paper might look like an upset, but on the betting lines, UCF is the favorite. So love the Knights. Probably my favorite bet of the week at -1.5.
All right, let's shift gears and go over to the NFL and our weekend of action here. And we're talking a lot of Bills and Seahawks, as you'd imagine, PJs. The Bills travel to the Pacific Northwest, fresh off of their win against Tennessee, and Seattle with an impressive win against Atlanta. Which way are you leaning here with the Seahawks and the Bills?
Guys, we got the Bills going up against Geno this week. It's going to be a good one. I don't know about you guys. This line for me is head-scratching, right? So sometimes I like playing the game where I like flipping a game and looking at it if it was reversed. So in this case, if the game was in Buffalo, right? They're telling us that right now the Bills are 3.5-point favorites in Seattle. Well, if you flip this line and Seattle was playing in Buffalo, the line would be 7.5, right? You give 2 points for home field. So if a neutral site game, it'd be 5.5. You put it in Buffalo, it's 7.5. Well, last week when the Bills played the Titans, Bills were 8.5-point favorites in that game. You're telling me the Bills, when they go up, you're telling me the Titans and the Seahawks are 1 point difference? I don't get this line. I think Buffalo wins the game, but, man, it feels like a lot of value there with the Seahawks now that we're getting the hook too. I know DK Metcalf might not play, and that's obviously a big deal. But you look at the Bills this year, and I'm sure you guys, like, they're beating the teams that they're supposed to beat, right? Their wins are all against teams that have a losing record. They've beaten the Titans, they've beaten the Jags, the Dolphins, and their 2 losses this year are against the Ravens and the Texans. Now, the Seahawks, I certainly think, are in a class below Baltimore and Houston, but I think they're above every team that they've played as well, which is, I think, why they win, but I don't think they cover the 3.5. So I just think we're getting too much value here on the Seahawks. I'll take the points with Seattle on Sunday.
PJ, a change at quarterback out of necessity in Cleveland, where the Ravens, the line I'm looking at right now, Ravens going on the road minus the 9. And before you came on, we were discussing the Browns at 1-6. Are we ready to count their year over here, or does the new start here with a new quarterback and now Ken Dorsey is going to be taking over the play calling? Is that enough there to get you to take the points in the Browns this week?
I like the Browns plus the points. How can you not like them with Jameis over Watson? We saw what they looked like last year with kind of a gunslinger and Flacco, and obviously took them all the way to the playoffs. And now they're kind of getting the same thing with Jameis. There's going to be some good, there's going to be some bad, but I think it's going to help them a lot throughout the rest of the season. Obviously, no more Amari Cooper. We'll see if over the next couple of weeks the Browns continue to trade off pieces. But, guys, it just feels like a good time to fade the Ravens a little bit. Their offense has been so hot, and they've been so on fire. And now you get them in a divisional road game at 1 p.m. And I can just tell you as a Ravens fan, these games kind of always tend to go the same way. Lamar and the Ravens usually win in Cleveland, but it feels like one of those games where they always get off to a slow start. Like it's always like 7-3, 10-3 at halftime, and then in the second half they start to open it up a little bit. So I actually like the first half under. That's my favorite play in this game at 21.5. Obviously, it's a short week for Baltimore, coming off another great offensive performance against Tampa Bay. And just with the divisional matchup, Cleveland being at home, I think they're going to muck this game up a little bit, keep it ugly. And with Jameis, going instead of Deshaun Watson, I think he'll be able to move the ball a little bit more. Obviously, a nice matchup for him going up against this Ravens secondary. So maybe flipping field position a little bit. The Browns haven't scored 20 points, guys, in any game this season. They're the only offense to do that so far. So I like that first half under 21.5.
Hey, Doug Peterson gets to keep his job for another week as the Jags return from London after dispatching of the Patriots and splitting their London series there. Green Bay, the opponent, PJ. And if you're circling this one, I have to imagine it's because you think there might be some value there with the Jags. What are your thoughts?
I do, Danger. I do, and it's really just all fade about Green Bay and the spot for them. Obviously, coming off a nice win against Houston, game-winning field goal. But next week, guys, they got a big one with Detroit at home in Green Bay. So that's going to be a monster game. And all you got in between is this road game against the 2-win Jags, who obviously have been struggling this season. Now, I know a lot of people might be a little bit nervous about the spot for Jacksonville coming home from London, but keep in mind they did this last year where they played back-to-back weeks out in London and then came back. Last year they won and covered as favorites against Indianapolis. So I think if there's any team equipped to do this, it is Jacksonville because they go out to London every single year. But Green Bay historically has not been good in the state of Florida. When Rodgers was there, they would always struggle against the Jags and the Bucks and the Dolphins, and it's just never been a state that's been good to them. They always struggle against these Florida teams. So I like Jacksonville. It feels like a line that probably should be 3.5, but because of how well these favorites and these road favorites have been doing the last couple of weeks, we're getting some value here on Jacksonville, and Green Bay is 4.5. So I think this could be a little bit of a sleepy, trappy spot for Green Bay. How can they not be looking ahead to that showdown with Detroit next week? So I'll take the points here with the Jags.
Yeah, PJ, another game that, honestly, I don't know how you're going to pick this one. Texans coming off a loss to Green Bay. They're back home taking on the Colts. Already these two teams met one another back in week 1. It's actually the Colts getting 5. I think most of us would think, hey, the Texans should win this game, but is 5 points too many, PJ?
It is, Gene. I mean, look, the Texans are 5-2 this year, guys, but they have a negative point differential, and all 5 of their wins have been by one score. Like, they're not blowing anybody out. Keep in mind, too, they've already played the Colts this season. So, I mean, we know in the NFL it's tough to beat a team 2 times. So that's really just part of the handicap. You know, this is the second time Indianapolis is getting a look at them, and the fact that Houston is not blowing anybody out. So in a divisional game, you know, this line's already moved from 6.5 to 6. Now it's down to 5. I like Indianapolis to keep this game close. They played week 1, and that was by far Anthony Richardson's best game of the season. So this matchup against Houston, he really exploited it in week 1. Now Indianapolis gets to see him again without Nico Collins. I like the Colts guys here plus the points. You know, these underdogs are going to start coming around again. We saw how well they were doing the first 3 or 4 weeks, and obviously the last 2 weeks, these favorites have just been going on a crazy run. I think the underdogs are going to start picking up here. It feels like the favorites, there's a little too much value right now on these underdogs. It feels like these lines are a little bit overvalued just because of how these road teams and how these favorites have been doing. So a lot of dogs this week that I like, a lot of home underdogs, and the Colts being one of the road dogs that I like this week at +5.
We have reached the sports equinox on the calendar, PJ. We've got NBA action, which got underway last night. The NHL is in full swing, of course, the NFL. And we still have the World Series to contend with. It all gets underway Friday. We know the lineup, obviously. We know the matchup, the Yankees and the Dodgers. And while we have you, and we have Game 1 coming up on Friday night, we'd have to get a sense of which way you're leaning here for this series.
I like the Dodgers, guys. I thought that the Dodgers and the Padres were the 2 best teams, and I thought whoever won that series was going to win the World Series. So the Dodgers obviously advanced. They take care of the Mets, who a lot of people felt like were the team of destiny. They had a great thing going. And, I mean, just watching that series, the Dodgers were the far superior team. And, you know, the Yankees, it feels like up to this point, they've really gotten fortunate. You had to figure the Orioles and the Astros were probably the 2 teams that would have given them the toughest series. Obviously, both of those teams get knocked out in the wild card round. And then it was basically just the Yankees versus the AL Central. It was the Tigers, Guardians, and Royals. They dispose of the Royals. They take care of the Guardians. So it's going to be a good series. I just think the Dodgers are the best team. The Yankees really haven't been tested like the Dodgers have been up to this point. So I like the Dodgers, guys. Take care of business. I'd take L.A. My guess would be Dodgers in 6. I think get it done.
Yeah, PJ, just if you had any thoughts on the NBA tonight, if anybody wants to play here, you've got 10 games tonight. You've got Milwaukee actually giving up points in Philadelphia. That's because Philadelphia's not playing their top 2 stars. Is there anything on the NBA schedule tonight that jumps out at you?
One play I do like, Gene, is going to be the under in Memphis and Utah at 228.5. So my advice to people out there, guys, betting the NBA early on in the season is I like betting these teams that have a lot of continuity, right? I mean, obviously in the offseason, there's trades, there's different free agent pickups. Some of these teams are trying to work out the chemistry and work out the kinks with the 2 new pieces. Just look at last night's games, right? I mean, you obviously had the Knicks and the T-Wolves as the 2 losers, and both of those teams were involved in a big trade. And then you had the other 2 teams in the Lakers and the Celtics who returned their starting lineups and all their key players. So those teams, I think, have the upper hand early on in the season when they kind of know each other, when it's time for each of the stars to take turns. They understand defensive assignments. They kind of know where everybody's going to be. Whereas the Knicks and the T-Wolves, for some of their big players that they're relying on this year, it's going to take them a little bit of time. So for this Memphis-Utah game tonight, I like the Grizzlies a lot this year in the Western Conference, but they were so beaten up last year with injuries. But, man, you look at their roster with Marcus Smart and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zach Edey. I mean, they're going to be one of the best defensive teams in the NBA this year. So I'm not looking to bet Minnesota like on the spread because I'm a little bit worried about it taking them some time to gel. But I'm not concerned about their defense at all. They're going to be able to guard. And going up against Utah tonight, who's going to be one of the bottom 5 teams in the NBA, I think it's a good start for them. So under 228.5 in Utah and Memphis.
Hey, PJ, quick philosophical question for you. If you're somebody who does some wagering and you get offered the cash out, do you ever take the cash out when it's offered to you? And I'm asking, Well, I'm asking for me because you just made a real compelling argument about the World Series and your Dodgers pick over the Yankees. As somebody who got the Yankees, I thought at a pretty good value at the start of the postseason. That cash out does look a little bit enticing, and you typically if I stick with the Yankees, that almost ensures that New York will be losing the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, usually, Danger, I don't cash out, especially on a future. I try and hedge it if I can. I think for somebody who's in your spot that maybe have a future on the Yankees, like what I would do personally if you don't want to cash out is you can look to hedge it in a way where you take the Dodgers at -1.5, and you get some plus money on them at +155. So that obviously if they take game one and you're in a little bit of a hole and they take game two and they're up 2-0, well, you got that +155 ticket on the Dodgers. And then, look, you can come right back and bet some more Yankees to win the series because you know that you're going to get more plus money on it. So obviously you can take the cash out, make yourself some more money. But I like to hedge a little bit and try and find different ways that I can still bet into the series and maybe even find a way to win myself more money. So my advice to you and everybody out there is, if you're thinking about a cash out, I'd honestly just hedge by maybe taking the Dodgers on an alternate line. And obviously that way, if the Dodgers, win in 4, 5, or 6 games, you cash that ticket. And if the Yankees win the series, then you got your future to look back on. And if it goes to a game 7, then you can either just ride out your ticket or you can come right back and bet the Dodgers on the money line. So some different ways you can attack it. You can certainly cash out. But me personally, I always look to try and hedge certain things.
Excellent advice from PJ Glasser. See, it's fun talking about the Yankees and Dodgers. For us Mets fans, PJ, we just can look back. What a fun series that was, all 3 of them. And now we look ahead, and you're worried about who might leave this team, the guy who, the first baseman who hit all the home runs. Why am I drawing a blank?
Yeah, the polar bear. What? That's his nickname, right? They call him the polar bear?
Yeah. Why am I drawing a blank here?
Pete Alonso, he was an absolute beast this season for the Mets. Personally, guys, I cannot wait for this World Series. And, man, that Yankees outfielder that they have, not the guy in center, but the guy in right field.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I know. He's clutch. Yes.
Oh, God, Soto.
I'm fearful that I'm going to get a meme from PJ at like 7:15 Sunday night here about Geno Smith.
Here we go. PJ, it's great having you on with us, man. Appreciate the time. Let's talk again next week.
Always a pleasure, fellas. Good luck. Talk to you guys next week.
You got it. PJ Glasser is the host of Send It In on the BetQL network. You can find it in the free-to-download Odyssey app. You can find it on YouTube and Twitch. And our Odyssey Sports Betting Insider Calls presented by BetMGM. Go check out all the latest lines today on the BetMGM app.
Love that guy. Just plays along. Yeah.
The absolute best. And giving you good advice, too. I mean, if you're somebody like me, look, I don't know exactly what's going on. This guy is in it. He's that advice about cashing out. Like, I never really want to cash out. I feel like that's a coward move, right? I want to cash out and just take what they're offering. I don't like that.
Well, sometimes you might have to. Maybe like when you place the future and like circumstances change and you might,
The hedge is nice, though. I like what he's talking about there, and that might be the way to play it. However, I kind of like the Yankees. I still kind of like the Yankees to win this series.
See, what I like, there are many things I like talking about, PJ, but like talking about the square money versus the sharp money, and I'm glad we kind of landed on the BYU game. Wait a second. They're ranked 11th. They're 7-0. They're taking on a team with a losing record, but BYU is getting points. Why?
Because the pro money is coming in.
The pro money, yeah. So don't
Central
be like,
Florida.
That's like, oh my gosh, that's a great deal. Yeah. No, it's not.
Yeah. Central Florida. That's the pick. Love PJ for sharing that wisdom with us. And let's all get some winners. Let's make some money this weekend in college and pro football, and maybe even the World Series as well. We'll get Jim Riley in here next to the Barreled Up Podcast, Ball Cap Sports. We'll talk more World Series. We have time for your calls at 866-4326. And I'll explain next in the sports bar why it's not Josh Allen this season as MVP unless we see something drastically happen here. But the feels like an evergreen topic with Josh Allen and the MVP consideration, and history has shown that at some point the wheels fall off of the MVP train for Josh Allen. I'll explain.
Okay. What is the second most popular sport in America? I mean, the NFL being number one, and I'm not talking about college football. I'm talking about the four big ones. I'm going to try to make an argument for something you might not expect.
Okay. We've got that and more on the way. Don't forget, Jim Riley of the Barreled Up Podcast joining us here in about a half an hour as well. Join us anytime at 866-4326, 585-866 4FAN.
Rochester and streaming online and in the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester. The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
It's a lengthy injury report for the Buffalo Bills on a Wednesday. Middle linebacker Terrell Bernard excused today for a personal reason. He's also dealing with ankle and pectoral injuries. Not practicing today, Curtis Samuel, DeJuan Smoot, Daquan Jones excused. He was given a Veterans Day of rest. Sean McDermott once again asked about those slow starts.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, there's always something to work on. Even when you're winning, there's plenty to work on. So, we just got to go back to the process today and get back out there and practice and making sure we're dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and ready to execute.
Bills in Seattle. Our pregame coverage will begin at noon coming up on Sunday. Kansas City trading for Tennessee wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. It's a fifth-round pick, which could become a fourth. Hockey tonight on the Fan. The Amerks hosting Cleveland. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
It's an advantageous matchup for the Bills defense, but I think it comes down to like any other game, like winning that battle up front. And then offensively, you've got to score probably 24-plus points. So I think it's a tough road game. I think Sean historically gets his team up to play in those West Coast games.
Mike Danger.
So we were trying to figure out, make heads or tails of what Seattle is. And they're a first-place team. They're kind of like the Bills. They've had some head-scratchers, but I don't know that anybody that follows the Seahawks can really explain what are the Seahawks and what are the Bills getting themselves into. And for some reason, why do I not feel comfortable about this spot for Buffalo?
Gene Battaglia.
Some of these injuries, if the Bills are down two linebackers potentially, how would this look going against this offense? Actually, the Seattle offense puts a lot up through the air. Seattle is a mystery team to us, but maybe this is just a game where it kind of starts from within. How do you start quicker for the Buffalo Bills? That's going to be the top storyline.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan. Rochester.
We'll get a World Series preview from our buddy Jim Riley at the Barreled Up podcast. He's stopping by the sports bar here in about 20 minutes or so. We appreciate you stopping by. However, you're listening, 95.7 FM, AM 950. You can get us on your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. Hear us where we sound our best. The free to download Odyssey app. And check out our video stream on our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester. Also on Twitch at The Fan Rochester. Our library of episodes as well. We have a podcast library of thousands of episodes for you to check out wherever you get your podcasts. We encourage the Odyssey app. And if you go back to earlier this week, we had a conversation with Nate Geary, the Buffalo Bills radio network. You remember this on Monday.
Right.
And I teed him up because I saw him put this out after the game against the Titans, and I really wanted him to make his case as to why Josh Allen should be considered the favorite to win MVP. Now, I think earlier in the season, through 3 games at least, we all looked at Josh Allen's play and we're like, this is it. This is the year. He's going to be the MVP. Look at how great he's played. Now, the Houston game was a bit of a stinker. You lose the way you lose to Baltimore. And now, since that conversation on Monday with Nate, you got Lamar Jackson throwing 5 touchdowns, a near-perfect passer rating against the Bucs on Monday night, elevating him to the favorite now to win his 3rd MVP. And I know a lot of people will point to Josh Allen not throwing a pick so far this year. And that's obviously great, considering that in the last 3 seasons, Gene, he's had games that truly derailed any chance he had of winning the award. Let me take you back to 2021. You had the Jags game. You had the blowout loss to the Colts in 22. Man, we still remember that disastrous Vikings loss at home, the goal line fumble, the overtime interception. That ended his bid for MVP that season. Last season, you could point to the Week 1 performance at the Jets. You could look at the Broncos' Monday night loss, the game that got his offensive coordinator fired. There's a lot of football left to be played. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be in the conversation. If the Bills go on a run, he will be in the conversation. But Lamar, at this point, in my opinion, would really have to slip up. He would have to cost his team games, similar to how Josh Allen's turnovers the last 3 seasons had cost his team games, in order to loosen his stranglehold on winning his 3rd MVP.
Maybe. There's a little bit of, with any MVP conversation, we just acknowledge there's always recency bias because we're just coming off that Monday night. Wow, that's fantastic. we're going to see games where Lamar Jackson has nothing to do with the Ravens, where he'll just hand it off to Derrick Henry and they'll win football games. To me, I think Nate hit this right in the head. It's always moving the goalposts with Josh Allen. Like, well, he turns the ball over. And, hey, like you ruled him out right off the top last year. But in reality, when the Bills made their run down the stretch, like he was one of the best, but because we had already mentally ruled him out. Pop quiz, Mike Danger. How many MVPs did Tom Brady win? Best quarterback of all time. I think we all can kind of universally agree. How many did he win?
Did he get 0 MVPs?
He
won
won
1 MVP?
He won 3.
3 MVPs.
But he won the Super Bowl MVP 5 times.
Yeah.
But the MVP, it's who is the quarterback for the number 1 seed. I don't know if we'll ever get to a point where you'll vote another position because, again, presenting something against the Lamar argument, what if Derrick Henry continues to pile up yards like this?
Was the last MVP Adrian Peterson?
Correct.
Non-quarterback?
Yeah, 2017.
Okay. Yeah, it's 2017. That's almost like what the Chiefs are rostering on offense now, the 2017 All-Stars with Kareem Hunt and DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce. I understand that there is some recency, and Lamar just looked like he took over the game on Monday night. But if we're going to
2012.
Oh, I was going to say 2017.
Yeah, 2012 was the year he went over 2,000
and that was the
yards.
last time you had a non-quarterback win league MVP.
2012, correct.
So over
I'm
10
wrong
years.
Yep.
12 years. With Lamar, if there's a game or two that costs him the 1 seed down the stretch, that he, his turnovers, you can directly correlate the turnovers to them losing the game. And I think with Josh Allen, man, that Vikings game still stings, right? We think about that, like, what happened? A goal line fumble, the overtime pick, like,
goal line fumble, okay, like things like that happen. I actually have a bigger problem with the overtime pick because he had it in the back of his mind.
Throw to Diggs.
Yeah, not only to win the game, but how I want to write the script. Like, we're going to do this against his former team. Like, okay. I don't need Josh Allen to be playing at MVP level. I need him just to continue to play smart football. The Houston game was a stinker, but he didn't turn it over. So
he didn't turn it over, but he didn't play well.
No, he didn't play well, but you can win games and not play well. You can also...
But you didn't win that game.
Right.
And a lot of people say, well, you didn't win that game because of poor coaching and the way it was managed. And he came alive in the second half, but that game statistically was not a good game for Josh Allen.
That game, the Tennessee game, you won because they're a bad opponent. You played that first half against Houston, you couldn't recover, and you were also on the road. I think the MVP conversation danger is also like we could roll this back in the first week in December and laugh. Because it's so fluid. There was a point last year we're talking about Dak Prescott as the MVP, and then he comes to Buffalo, and then nothing. Yeah. So, all it takes is one game. Nope. And I guarantee you there's some quarterback right now that all of a sudden is going to be in the top 3 at the end of the year that we just don't recognize that they're going to come on down the stretch.
Jameis Winston, step on up and get your long-deserved award.
What are the comeback player of the year odds for Jameis Winston? All of a sudden, if the Browns start to win games and we're feeling
I don't think he's eligible.
No?
He didn't have a hardship or come back from an injury, or isn't that the new guidelines that the AP put out there?
Right. So basically the way you stunk for your whole career, now you're good, like Sam Darnold, say for instance.
Right. Sam Darnold, I think, is still the favorite, even though the guidelines that the AP has set forth, I think they have to make it very, very clear because Damar Hamlin was robbed last year of comeback player of the year by Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco, who didn't come back from any injury, just was kind of irrelevant until he got to Cleveland and made some noise and got them into the postseason. And the next thing you know, he's winning the comeback play. And even Joe Flacco is like, no, come on. What are we doing here, guys? So I think while a Jameis or I'm saying Jameis, he hasn't even, really hasn't started a game yet for Cleveland, or Sam Darnold, while they make a lot of sense, like, oh my God, look what they did with their new teams. Look what they did. No, it'll be like a guy who came back from an injury or somebody who was injured early and came back late, whatever it is. It's not going to be who deserves the award the most.
The following up by rant from yesterday, Danger. Opening night tonight in the NBA for many teams. We've got 10 games, including the Sixers. And Joel Embiid is not going to be playing tonight on opening night. No, Paul George is not going to give it a go, but at least George has some sort of injury excuse. Embiid played in the Olympics, but now we're talking about the injury he had back in.
We have to manage it. We have to manage this injury.
Here's my take, Danger. If the NBA keeps this stuff up, maybe MLB rises up to reclaim being the second most popular sport in the country. Now, you think that's not possible? All right, well, what are we exactly judging this against? Because I'm looking like, okay, what would it take? Would it surprise you to learn that in 2023, the NBA grows $14 billion? That's a lot of money. They've got all this money. Major League Baseball grossed $14 billion. $14 billion for baseball. Now, nowhere close to the NFL, certainly, but here's the opportunity, all right? Whatever cliche you want to use, the oven is hot, the pizza, whatever it is. Dodgers, Yankees. I want to see Monday night's numbers, Danger. I want to see, could we actually have baseball beat the NFL in the TV rating Monday night? Giants Steelers, the Monday night game.
Monday night would be game 3
in the Bronx.
Giants Steelers in Pittsburgh. Not a real compelling matchup, but two teams that you would think would draw a pretty good number.
I'm saying the New York market is not watching this game. They're not. You're going to choose Brian Dable over Juan Soto and Aaron Judge.
What's the best metric to determine the popularity of a league?
That's the question I have. Is it the money? Is it the TV number? Is it the under 35? Because honestly, like if I'm going to read you under 35 numbers, I mean, it is just going to be, it's going to be.
That's actually surprising to me that Major League Baseball grosses more than the NBA grosses. And when I hear that, then I want to go to, despite the TV ratings or the audience of who might watch a World Series or a particular baseball game versus the NFL or the NBA, I would actually say then Major League Baseball is probably the second most popular.
But you can't say that because then if I'm going to say TV ratings or globally, okay, that's also part of the conversation. And baseball's trying to do this. When they did the World Baseball Classic, that was really cool. But we were late to the party, I felt like. It wasn't until the last game where we tuned in. But basketball globally, the Olympics, everybody is playing this game across the globe. Not everybody is playing baseball. It's a debate here. You and I didn't grow up when baseball was number one, like it was the NFL when we were growing up. But you and I yesterday identified when did that kind of change, and to me it was Jordan, and then a strike in the '90s, and then people kind of went away, and then by the way, these guys were juicing. I'm saying that part of the reason baseball slipped a little bit was because of PR, and it brings it back to Joel Embiid. You can't play opening night at home for your fans.
Yeah, I don't like it at all.
I hate that.
I think it's a soft look. I think it's a bad look for not just Joel Embiid, not just the Sixers, but for the NBA. And you're fighting, you're clawing, you're scratching to get our attention. I want to see greatness. I want to see the impossible happen. And it's more likely that I see that when your best players are out there. You're injured. But you weren't injured. Like we see through it. They're very shady with how they go about these injuries, protecting these players, holding these players out. It makes me not want to go to an NBA game. It makes me not want to invest in the NBA because I don't know the product that I'm going to get. It's an inconsistent product. Some nights the NBA is fantastic. And you're going to get close games, and you're going to see the best. They're shooting the lights out of the arena. And sometimes you're going to get guys sitting out because of a schedule, or I've got to maintain this injury. I got to come back from this injury. What injury? You were fine just a couple months ago.
Oh, but now we have the rule that if you miss so many games, you're not eligible for the MVP. Okay.
Whatever. Can I get a verdict on this move, Gino?
Mm-hmm.
How about bye weeks in fantasy football? I'm not talking about like the NFL schedule. I'm saying like if we have to suffer through the NFL's bye week gauntlet, let's make the fantasy game even more like the real thing. Give every manager a week to sit back, assess, and decide what the best lineup should be for their team moving forward. Bye weeks in fantasy football.
Hate it. Next. Like what? Like honestly,
I
like,
can't
this is
believe
like,
you would start
why-
with no. That's
no.
just so out of character for you.
No!
Why? Who brought this up?
I'm bringing it up. I wanted to know if this is something that makes sense.
See, like we're supposed to say, "Oh, okay." No, that's a stupid idea, Danger. Like you would not want to play fantasy football for a week.
Yeah, just to step back, assess,
Well, you can do that.
reclaim my life.
You can do that at any point, not enter a lineup. I preferably do it when you're playing me. I would like that a lot.
Right, because that's the only way you can beat me.
Oh,
I don't know. I just thought it was, if you're like I am a commissioner of a league, I might float it out to the other managers, see what they say. How about a bye week, boys? You just scatter a bye week throughout the you don't have to worry about your lineup that week. Just take the week off, reclaim some of your time, give it back, reassess. You can still make moves, but your guys are going to get some rest.
You could do that theoretically. It's called daily fantasy and take a day off or a week off or whatever it is. I have a take for you, Danger.
Tell me.
Okay, so the Chiefs this week playing the Raiders. Nah. Are the Chiefs going to be undefeated when they come to Buffalo? Here's their schedule. Tampa Bay Monday night, but we know that, well, what are the Buccaneers going to look like at that point? That's on the 4th. The Chiefs at home against Denver. That's it. Are the Chiefs going to be a 9-0 team when they enter Orchard Park?
So they've got the Raiders, they've got the Bucks, they got the Broncos. I think one of those teams gets them.
In Arrowhead.
All three of those are at Arrowhead?
No, the Raiders is not. That's in Vegas.
Might as well be Arrowhead.
Right.
Arrowhead
and
West.
The other two are in Arrowhead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure which one of those teams will get them, but I think one of those teams will get them.
I'm hoping because I look at the rest of the schedule. Oh, my gosh. They should be the number 1 seed here, which would be interesting. Like, after Buffalo, they go to Carolina. Ooh. They host the Raiders. Ooh. I know the Raiders got them last year, sure. They host the Chargers, and I'll give Harbaugh a pass for this year. They go to Cleveland. I don't see them tripping up there. Okay, Houston going there, but again, as we talk with PJ Glasser, is Houston really all that? Kansas City going to Pittsburgh, Kansas City going to Denver.
NFL is weird, man. One
It
of those
is.
games, they'll trip up on one of the divisional games. The Chargers will get them. The Raiders will get them.
They're 15-2 is my point.
Possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible. They sure feel like they're going to be the 1 seed because even if Baltimore wins out, they still have those 2 losses on their ledger, and one of them being to Kansas City, so they would lose that tiebreaker. They should be the 1 seed.
Goes back to my point. Bills are better off as a 4 than a 3, so you avoid Baltimore.
Yeah. You're gonna have to if you're gonna get to the Super Bowl, you're gonna have to beat Baltimore at some point.
Let somebody else beat Baltimore. Let it better. I'm sure there's teams that match up better against Baltimore than Buffalo.
Well, yeah, we saw some warts, some ugly warts on that game. Boy, let's get to Jim Riley and get a World Series preview. The Barreled Up Podcast, Ball Cap Sports on YouTube. Jim, our buddy, we'll talk Dodgers and Yankees and some other off-season news and notes that are happening around Major League Baseball next on The Fan Rochester.
update.
It is a lengthy injury report for the Buffalo Bills on this Wednesday. Middle linebacker Terrell Bernard was excused today for personal reasons, although Bernard also listed with ankle and pectoral injuries. Not practicing today, wide receiver Curtis Samuel and defensive lineman DeJuan Smoot. Also Daquan Jones given a Veterans Day of rest. Head coach Sean McDermott says the D-line is key.
True every week. Every week it's a must. You know, that's how the game is. That's where the game is won every week, up front and defensive line, offensive line. You know, being great with our technique, being great with the strain. You know, you talk about their defensive line. They've got some guys that can flat out rush the passer, and very impressed by the tape.
Kansas City trading for DeAndre Hopkins today. It's a fifth-round pick that could become a fourth. We got the Amherst tonight. They're hosting Cleveland. Gene Battaglia on the sports leader, the Fan Rochester.
Pull up a stool and join us. 585-866-4FAN. 866-432-6. The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
You can hear our next guest is the host of the Barreled Up Odyssey exclusive podcast on the free-to-download Odyssey app, also Ballcap Sports channel on YouTube, covering Major League Baseball and stopping by the Sports Bar with regularity. Roots in the 585, our buddy Jim Riley stops by. And Jim, I feel like everybody I talk to about the World Series is saying kind of the same thing. Like, oh, well, it was always going to be the winner of that Dodgers-Padres series. And not really giving the Yankees any sort of chance. Do you feel the same way about the Dodgers coming into this series? And what needs to happen for the Yankees to get this done?
Well, and thank you guys for having me back. I do appreciate it. It's always fun. I think that the natural instincts are to go with the Dodgers. You've got Shohei Ohtani, you've got Mookie Betts, you have an unstoppable lineup, you have a bullpen that has been lights out. So it makes sense to just sort of jump on with the Dodgers, but the Yankee team definitely cannot be overlooked. You know, one element of this club that really has not fired off and could level up this team is Aaron Judge. I think we have 5 or 6 hits in this postseason combined. He had 3 hits in the ALCS. Now 2 of them were home runs. But what if Judge goes out and catches fire and hits 4 or 5 home runs in the World Series, and Stanton keeps doing what he's doing, and Volpe and Glaber and Soto? There's a new level that the Yankees can unlock that I think a lot of people are not thinking about, and that is, what if Aaron Judge goes off? Because we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Dodgers pitching, and yes, they have so much talent, but I think there's a hole here. Tell me if you agree, because you get Flaherty and Yamamoto 1 and 2, and I don't think there's any dispute. I mean, the Yankees are going to have their work cut out for them. Walker Buehler against the Padres, not great. And I thought against the Mets he lived a little bit dangerously. Yes, he won, but I think that's a little bit concerned. Then are you going to the bullpen game? And then if you're going to the bullpen game in Game 4, or do you do that in Game 3? Because then how does the series line up? Can the Dodgers actually roll out bullpen games and get away with it in this series, Jim?
Yeah, that's what's scary about this team, is they can, and because their bullpen is so deep. The Yankees do not have that in their favor. The Yankees, in my analyzation of this thing, really only have a couple of guys that they can trust to go out there and get the job done, and the Dodgers have 6 of those guys. And when they do the bullpen days, I mean, they have guys that they can insert there and get extra outs and carry over into other innings. Like, you know, a guy like Landon Knack may be involved in the bullpen day. He can get 2 or 3 innings in there. If you keep the pitch count down, Ryan Brazier could go an extra batter or 2. So they can navigate it, and they've been able to navigate it to their advantage. But they're all pitching so well that it's a strength. It's a significant strength for this team. So to deploy it 1 or 2 times in this World Series, a bullpen day, makes sense for the Dodgers. They're so deep in the bullpen, and that is a lopsided advantage that they have that the Yankees unfortunately don't.
Jim, I thought you had a pretty entertaining ALCS. I think the NLCS was kind of, you were dealing with blowouts in pretty much every game. How important do you think it is? I mean, baseball stands to grow the game quite a bit here with a lot of stars on display and your two biggest markets hosting. I mean, is it important for this to be a 7-game series, a competitive series for baseball to get the kind of growth that we remember baseball having when we were growing up, to have that kind of popularity return to the game?
Yeah, I mean, all the better if this goes 7. And the more opportunity you have to put your product and to put these players, put these stars. I mean, we have in this game, no question about it, there's 7 at least future Hall of Famers across these two teams in this World Series. So the longer you have those players in front of the fan base and new fans and young fans, and 2 of them are just, I mean, they're generational with Ohtani and Soto. So the more you can have that out in front of them, in front of the fans, the better. The 2 major markets. So there's a couple different elements here. This is obviously we're going to see TV ratings records with this, right? Coming up with the 2 major markets with Japan. From a global perspective, this is going to probably be the biggest World Series in the history of baseball. And I'm not just trying to hyperbolize this thing. I really think we're going to see the biggest ratings. But from a rivalry standpoint too, dusting off the Dodgers and Yankees World Series, we haven't seen this since 1981. I think in the late 70s, early 80s, they played 3 or 4 times, and then all those times in the 50s and 60s. This is great for the history of baseball and that element, and when you consider the New York and the LA element here.
I'm going to give you an X factor, at least I think, for the Yankees. What are your thoughts, Jim, on Nestor Cortes? So Nestor Cortes, for folks who haven't been paying attention, he's been out since mid-September. Really, he isn't 100%. And actually, the way I kind of understand it, he could be risking further injury by actually going out there. But if he's added to the roster and a lefty going gets that would be something coming out of the Yankee bullpen there. Your thoughts there? Could they actually get something out of this, or is this not a risk not worth taking, in your opinion?
Well, I'll say this. I don't think you'll need him for long periods of time. I almost feel like if I'm strategizing this, if I'm Aaron Boone, I want to have as many options to throw at Shohei Ohtani as possible. And let's say Tim Hill gets the first crack late in game 1, and he gives up a home run. Well, I probably don't want to go back to Hill again. I want to try either Meza or Cortez. So it feels like you're giving yourself another option to attack Shohei Ohtani with, because you're going to try to handle him very, very carefully. And right now it's just Meza and Hill as the lefties. Cortez is the extra guy. So I don't know if you'll see any long stretches of innings or pitches from him. It'll probably be strategic around Ohtani and maybe Freddie Freeman and Max Muncy. They've got so many lefty bats, and you got to have lefty arms.
We had you on last week talking about Kiki Hernandez, like the idea that, my gosh, he has more postseason home runs than Bryce Harper. The Dodgers' bottom of the lineup, guys like Tommy Edman and Max Muncy is in the bottom lineup, guys that have been delivering. Is this actually sustainable, or could this actually go quiet here, in your opinion?
They have so many bats, and when you think about what they're carrying over from the NLCS, yes, Max Muncy and Tommy Edman and Kike had fantastic NLCS against the Mets, but what you didn't see is Teoscar Hernandez, you didn't see Will Smith. So even if, let's say, Tommy Edman goes cold and Max Muncy goes cold, well, that could be equally sort of countered or remedied if Teoscar Hernandez or Will Smith picks up. Not like 1 through 9, this team is everyone's on fire and everyone's operating on all cylinders. They're coming into this thing with a couple guys that had a cool series, and if they heat up, I mean, then this thing gets really out of control, or it makes up for maybe a couple guys that cool off.
And what about the injuries to both teams here? I know that the Freddie Freeman ankle has been something everybody's been monitoring all postseason.
Yeah, that ankle is definitely a problem. I've had ankle problems, throughout my life. And, if they had the DH spot open, he would be DHing. He would not be playing first base. Just that quick twitch motion from going from set and ready for the ball to field, getting your foot on the base and just constantly all game long, every time the ball's hit on the ground, having to move like that for an ankle that is as severely sprained as Freeman, that's a problem. But he can still hit. So that's where you're kind of choosing your spots, and Dave Roberts has been doing that so far. The question is really, is this layover? You get 4 or 5 days off here. That can be huge for Freddie Freeman because you can ice it, you can get it down, you can get off it, you can get the inflammation down and get off it. And by the time we play on Friday, it'll probably feel, it'll be sore, but it'll feel a lot better. And that can keep him out there longer. It's just a matter of if he aggravates it and if he aggravates it, how severely could it be? But they're 3-0 in this postseason without him. I don't think you can sustain that. And I think if you want to win the World Series, it's better if you have him in there. But it's been such a deep lineup that they've been able to work around this Freddie Freeman issue. We haven't really seen Freddie Freeman have an impact in this postseason. That's an area I talked about how the Yankees could unlock Aaron Judge, which would take them to a new level. If Freddie Freeman's ankle is good and he starts hitting like Freddie Freeman that we know, the Dodgers could unlock a Freddie Freeman level that we haven't seen yet. There's going to be a great World Series. There's so many different avenues to weave around with storylines and players and everything. It's really exciting.
Yeah, there's another storyline too. And if you were looking at all the numbers that the Dodgers have ever retired, there's only one number that is not in the Hall of Fame. That's Fernando Valenzuela. We learned of his passing this morning. Just your thoughts on Fernando mania there. And the one thing I learned today that maybe I just forgotten because you talk about the Dodgers of Fernando's era. We remember, the last time the Yankees and Dodgers played. Well, what got the Dodgers to the World Series, I'm talking about in the World Series, was 1981, and that was the Blue Monday game at Rick Monday with the home run in Montreal. They don't win that game if Fernando allows one run over 8 innings there. We forget about that part of the story.
Yeah, the things that he did just for Venezuelan baseball, you think about how much of a baseball factory that is these days, so many talented players coming out of that part of the country. You don't know if it's like that now, if he doesn't sort of spark an interest in baseball in that part of the country. And then just from a Dodgers perspective, a huge figurehead in the history of that organization, to lose him young, only the age of 63, is certainly saddened. And, having it happen on the heels of this World Series getting started. Obviously I would expect, tributes to be paid and him be remembered fondly. It's sad, the passing of Fernando, and I think a lot of people are probably dusting off some memories that they have of Fernando. I was still rather young when Fernando Mania was going on, so personally, firsthand memories. I don't have many of them, but all the stories that I've heard. Just a monumental figure in Dodgers history, a history that is full of them. For him to stand out is something special.
Hey, Jim, both of these teams always have high expectations. You have massive payrolls. You have huge stars. With those expectations come pressure. I don't know if one team has more pressure on them than the other. Is there an advantage for one team who maybe is going into the series with a little bit more to prove, a little bit more pressure? Is it the Dodgers because of Ohtani, or is it the Yankees just because they're the Yankees?
Well, the Dodgers come into this having, missed out on winning the World Series after being the favorite year in and year out. They won it in 2020, but so many fans don't want to give them credit for it because it was the pandemic-shortened season. So this is a Dodger team that there is a lot riding on winning the World Series, but I feel like the pressure to actually win it might be a little bit more for the Yankees because of all the it's been such a long time, and you've got Aaron Boone that's always feeling the pressure to win this thing. You've got maybe the only year that Juan Soto is there. I think that there's a good chance he's back, but this is your 1 year with Soto. It's not like Ohtani is on a 1 year contract and he could walk at the end of the year. If this doesn't go your way, if you're the Dodgers, most of these guys are going to be back next year, and you'll go at it again. But it's so hard to get here, as we've clearly seen, because we have number one versus number one. We don't get that most of the time. Like, that is a rare thing for the best team in the National League to go up against the best team in the American League record-wise. So to get here is really special. I would lean Yankees with a little bit more pressure. Again, they both have a ton of weight on their shoulders heading into this thing. But with the Yankees, with the caveat that this is maybe the only Juan Soto season, I'll tip the scales towards the Yankees there.
Jim, before I let you go, I want to get your thoughts on a few other stories here in baseball. Sure. When the Mets kind of went out, I'm like, well, I'm not upset. Not at all, right? They exceeded expectation. The whole ride was a lot of fun. It gets you excited for next year. So, like, all right, I'm going to look up the Mets schedule, and I'm looking this up, and I'm like, oh, my gosh, like, baseball has a typo on this. They spelled Atlanta ATH. Oh, wait a second. That's not Atlanta. They're saying the Athletics. What are we calling this team? Are they going to be Vegas? Are they Sacramento? Or are they just simply going to be the Athletics baseball team?
They are going to be the Athletics. That's it. No city attached.
Oh, geez.
That's it. They are a team without a city. No, that is the story. That is from that was in the LA Times, that they are not going to they're not going to be the Sacramento Athletics. They're not going to be the California Athletics or the Golden State Athletics. They're just going to be the Athletics.
Wow, that'll get people fired up to go out and buy tickets there in 100-degree heat in Sacramento, right?
Right. Well, and this is going to be for 3, maybe 4 years, because the deal is for 3 with an option for a 4th if the Vegas Stadium's lagging behind. So it's it kind of reminds me of in the NFL how Washington didn't have a team name, so they were just the Washington Football Club. Now it's almost in reverse, where we've got the Athletics but no city attached. But for Washington, that was 1 or 2 years. We're looking at 3 or 4 years of this with the Athletics. So by the time they go to Vegas, are they going to change the name? Because they're going to need to switch it up, because everyone's just going to call them the Athletics. No one's going to be used to calling them the insert city Athletics anymore. So, yeah, kind of bizarre. Just another bizarre wrinkle in this whole Athletics, Oakland, Sacramento, Las Vegas situation.
And Jim, what about the unfortunate situation with the Trop, and what will the Rays be looking at doing here this upcoming season, not really having their traditional home?
Nobody really knows. There's a lot of speculation about where they could land. There's a lot of, down in Florida, in St. Pete and Tampa and Clearwater and Sarasota, there's a ton of spring training facilities down there. So there's baseball fields everywhere, but they are aligned with other organizations. They're aligned with Philadelphia. They're aligned with Baltimore. They're aligned with Detroit. So, New York, there's the Tampa Yankees. That's a low A Yankees affiliate. But I can't imagine the Rays are going to want to go and play in a Yankee stronghold and get heckled by Yankee fans. So, and again, these ballparks hold like 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 capacity. That doesn't work either. It's really confusing. I don't think the Trop's going to be playable. The material that they need to rebuild that roof doesn't just magically arrive at your doorstep and you start putting it up there. And on top of it, you had the standing water issue with no drainage for the field. I think, this is my best guess, is that they will end up in Orlando at ESPN's Worldwide Sports Complex. The only hang-up is that there are a ton of youth tournaments that they'll either have to work around or cancel or reschedule, but I think that's the only option. I can't see them leaving Florida. It's kind of funny to think of them going to Oakland and then they're the Oakland Rays, but that takes all the money to California. Yeah. They're not going to go to Montreal because then that takes the money out of the country. I think they stay in Florida. I think they go to Orlando. It's only an hour and a half away, so the fan base can still drive over to it. And who knows, for if you live on the right side of Tampa, it may actually be easier for you to get over to Orlando than it is in St. Pete with all those causeways. I think that it ends up being Orlando, and the youth tournaments that get blown out because of a Rays weekend home series, so be it. The Rays got to play somewhere.
Have you ever been to Florida in July? I have.
I don't want to play games outside.
No, I mean, we're complaining about, oh my gosh, the A's are going to play on AstroTurf. What's going on here, Field Turf, or whatever it is? I mean, that's got to be an issue here too. And they call the Tampa Bay Lightning the Lightning because, well, I mean, basically every day you're going to get some pop up something there, Jim.
That is definitely an issue, and that's why this is only that's why it's good that this is a 1 year problem. Because if this is going to be a multi-year issue, they would have to figure something out. They would have to find an indoor spot. I think they're just going to have to deal with it because indoor facilities, as far as availability for the Rays, I don't think they've got it. I think they're going to have to deal with it and figure it out because there's no options. I do feel confident that the Trop will be good to go for 2026. It's just 2025 looks like it's going to be a wash.
But they got the new stadium opening up soon too, don't they? I mean, would that be reopening up the Trop for a year or no?
28, I think.
28?
They were supposed to begin construction on the new stadium at the beginning of 2025 with the hopes that it would be open in 2028. So this is still a ways off. That's a problem. I mean, and all of the – so now you're Tampa and you're trying to figure out how you're going to get this done. You've got all of the materials and all the manpower and all the construction equipment and men that you have for the new park that you're building. And at the same time, you have to repair the Trop. It's an unfortunate mess for Tampa.
Yeah, they were 2 games below 500. They're going to suck next year, Jim. And like how are they going to attract any? You know what? Do I really? For that matter, the A's there. Like those 2 teams, you're only going there if you don't have any other options. I would see it.
Well, they've always been a team that kind of rebuilds from within. And if they make any free agent moves, it's sort of that savvy move. Think of Zach Eflin. Zach Eflin went to Tampa. Nobody else really had much of an interest. They paid him the most that you're used to seeing Tampa pay. I think it was like $17 million or $18 million a year for Zach Eflin. So they're not a big destination as it is, and they don't really sort of swim on that side of the pool. They do a lot of it from within. I think Tampa's going to actually be very good next year, which will be interesting to see the eyes that are sort of become fixated on what's going on in Tampa because they one of their troubles this year was they had their 3 best pitchers injured all year. They all started to slowly trickle back in as the season went on, but next year they'll start with full strength in the rotation, some really good bats, some incredibly young talent. Tampa's going to be in the mix next year, which will only bring more attention to this whole stadium mess once we're in season. Maybe they get the Trop ready for the Rays in the postseason of 2025. Maybe they can have it ready by then.
Jim, gracious with your time as always to join us here on the Sports Bar. I want to give you the floor to make sure you can tell us more about Barreled Up and about Ball Cap.
Yeah, thank you guys. As always, I love coming on and talking. Check out the podcast on the Odyssey app, Barreled Up Sports, talking about everything going on. As far as the postseason goes, previewing the World Series, breaking down matchups, talking through it, all the ins and outs. And as soon as the World Series is done, we'll go into off-season mode with free agents and trades. And literally the same thing is happening over on the YouTube channel. It's just you get to see me. Same kind of coverage, same talking everything. It's just you have the visual aspect. So if you want to see my face as you're listening to my words, YouTube is the place to go.
We were having this discussion before you came on real quick. Second most popular sport, and what is the metric? Because I don't know, like this is an opportunity for baseball maybe to reclaim the position I think the NBA has, but then baseball also grosses more money than baseball. How far is the gap between the NBA and Major League Baseball, would you say?
The NBA feels like it really exploded with the ability to market their players. And just every team has a superstar, and you're interested in that superstar, even if you're not interested in that team. And Major League Baseball, it feels like it's getting there from that aspect, because you've got these young superstars that are not just, American-born stars. Now you have superstars from Japan and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. The more you get these entities, players, that almost live on their own. It doesn't matter where they play. It just matters I want to watch them. That's what helps, because Major League Baseball feels like it is much more siloed to each individual team. You're a fan of the team, and you're not necessarily as much a fan of baseball, except for, when the postseason comes around. But for the rest of the year, you only care about your team. NBA, yes, you care about your team. This is my take on it. NBA, you care about your team, but you also care about you care about the star players. You care about LeBron James. You care about just, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant. Doesn't matter where they play. I feel like baseball's getting there with players like Acuna and Soto and Ohtani. And it doesn't happen overnight. These guys got to be, we got to be well deep into their careers, and we got to keep the replenishment of talent coming. And baseball feels like it's doing that. And the rule changes have been great. A World Series like this, where you'll market the game with two of the biggest markets, two of the biggest teams, baseball's on the rise, no doubt about it.
I thought you were going to ask him if he likes the idea of having a bye week in fantasy football, since we were just talking about that as well. For the managers, for the boys,
you're really hurt that I
sit
hate
back
that idea.
and just sit back and kind of evaluate where the team is at. Jim, I mean, just glancing over our records this year in the league that we share together, and I could use a week off. I don't know how you feel.
Oh, yeah, I could use a couple weeks off. I'm getting cooked this year. I need a week off leading up to the trade deadline. Has that already passed? I know the football trade deadline's right around the corner. I need to make some trades and start trading players for draft picks next year, because this year was an absolute wash for the old Bills Mafia crew in the fantasy league.
Appreciate the time, Jim, man. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys. You too.
You got it. Jim Riley, Barreled Up Podcast, Ball Cap Sports. I knew Jim would be on my side, and he needs some time. I need some time. Every now and then, as a fantasy manager, you just need to take a step back. You need some time to evaluate that bye week.
The bullpen for the Yankees.
That's the difference, right?
That's the difference. Yeah, like if Cortez can suck it up and be that lefty, but here's the thing, and I would advise any Yankee fan: Manaea won Game 2. And Shohei looked at it, and Shohei got him in Game 6. So, if you're going to wheel out Hill or the lefty the first time around and you have success, that doesn't mean that Ohtani's not going to figure it out the second time around.
Man, it's going to be a fun series, obviously. Remember last year the series between these two when Judge hurt his foot?
Yeah.
Watching it then felt like, okay, this is a preview of something bigger to come. And I feel like it's all coming to fruition here starting on Friday.
And he brings up an obvious point that I think we kind of gloss over, but you got the two best teams. We complain. I complain all the time. Hey, the playoffs are too big. They're too this. We're not getting the best. This is the best in both leagues.
And it doesn't happen too often in Major League Baseball. So let's buckle up and get ready for that ride. It all gets underway Friday, the World Series between the Dodgers and the Yankees, and Jim Riley of the Barreled Up Podcast stopping by to give us a little preview. Happy Hour is next on The Fan. The Chiefs make a trade for DeAndre Hopkins. You woke up to that breaking news. We have reactions to that. And, Gene, if we have time, I wanted to bring this up too. It's not really a Bills story, but there is a Bills angle into this story. We've talked about Tom Brady being a part owner of the Raiders now officially.
So he's on the broadcast this week?
He's on the broadcast this week.
Okay, so he's doing Bills and Seahawks.
Yes.
Okay.
And there are some rules with Tom Brady as an owner that we've talked about where he can't have the same kind of access that most broadcasters would have because, let's face it, he's got an interest. He's a part owner of the Raiders. However, there are a couple of inconsistencies, and some are pointing out that this rule maybe doesn't even exist. Like, it might just be a Tom Brady thing? We could dive into this a little bit here because I
Okay.
think it does relate to the Bills and what they want to try and get accomplished this week when they travel to Seattle. We'll get a round of shots and we'll get the last call. Your call is welcome at 866-4326, 585-866-4FAN.
W239BF Rochester. The sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan. Rochester. An Odyssey sports station.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
The update on the Bills' injured linebackers. Dorian Williams was limited today. Middle linebacker Terrell Bernard excused today for personal reason. He's also dealing with ankle and pec injuries. Not practicing today. Curtis Samuel, Dwan Smoot, Daquan Jones given a Veterans Day of rest. Sean McDermott once again asked about these slow starts.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, there's always something to work on. Even when you're winning, there's plenty to work on. So, we just got to go back to the process today and get back out there and practice and making sure we're dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and ready to execute.
A trade first reported this morning is now official. Kansas City gets wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins from the Titans. It's a 5th-round pick in return, which could become a 4th. Hockey tonight on The Fan. The Amherst back home. They host Cleveland. Don Stevens with the call at 7 o'clock. Gene Battaglia, The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
It's an advantageous matchup for the Bills defense, but I think it comes down to like any other game, like winning that battle up front. And then offensively, you got to score probably 24 plus points. So I think it's a tough road game. I think Sean historically gets his team up to play in those West Coast games.
Mike Danger.
So we were trying to figure out, make heads or tails of what Seattle is. And they're a first-place team. They're kind of like the Bills. They've had some head-scratchers that I don't know that anybody that follows the Seahawks can really explain. What are the Seahawks and what are the Bills getting themselves into? And for some reason, why do I not feel comfortable about this spot for Buffalo?
Gene Battaglia.
Some of these injuries, if the Bills are down 2 linebackers potentially, how would this look going against this offense? Actually, the Seattle offense puts a lot up through the air. Seattle is a mystery team to us, but maybe this is just a game where it kind of starts from within. How do you start quicker for the Buffalo Bills? That's going to be the top storyline.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
It's happy hour in the Sports Bar. Danger and Battaglia with you. Glad you're with us at 95.7 FM, AM 950, the free to download Odyssey app, and our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester. 33 seconds, Sean McDermott on Geno Smith.
All right, if you're new to the show, this is our feature on Wednesdays when Sean McDermott speaks. He has a tendency, how should I say this, to lie.
He just pumps up the tires a little bit. This all started when the Bills were facing the Texans, and this was Andre Roberts, the former Bill, went on to the Texans, and he actually had the audacity. He was pumping up the tires so much to call Andre Roberts a future Hall of Famer. And we're like, okay, Sean, you're laying it on a little thick. Does Andre Roberts have nude pictures of you? What are we talking about here? He's not a Hall of Famer. Stop with the McLies.
So you're always going to get glowing praise on the opponent, certainly the opposing quarterback. And I will set the over-under 33 seconds. Geno Smith at 7. Does that sound fair? Are you going over or under 7?
I'm going with the under on this one because Geno Smith has kind of revitalized his career here, right? Like, he's not playing bad ball for Seattle.
Well, see, the risk here that I'm taking is McDermott could in this cut, and I never hear these cuts. He could go to the fat card like, well, yeah, I think he was drafted in the second round.
Right, yeah.
And I think he played for the Jets.
He'd play it dumb.
Yeah, he'd play it dumb and just state facts that we all know, and that's not a lie. So, again, play along, everybody. 7 is the over-under. Are you going over or under here on McDermott McLies?
Yeah, it's funny because he's been around the league like I have, and we just haven't probably, faced each other a ton, but ton of respect for his game and the way he's just, developed over the years and the staying power that he's shown. It's very impressive. Again, being out there the last few years, we haven't played them naturally yet, but or over the last couple of years, but very impressed by his level of play, by the way he has command of their offense, and they do a lot of high level, what I would say is high level stuff on offense.
5.
Just under.
5. You called it, Danger.
Yeah.
Like, well, we haven't played each other. I'm like, okay, it's a fact.
Yeah, that's true. I think he's been around a while. I think Maybe he was with the Jets before. I believe he was with the Jets. I believe the Jets drafted him. Yeah. It'll be fun. This is a sneaky. I think this is a sneaky tough game for the Bills. I mean, you could think the way the Bills, steamrolled a bad Titans team that they should have this momentum. Seattle has a head scratcher on their resume with that loss to the Giants. And maybe McDermott's defense is too much for Geno Smith to unpack. But there are some significant injuries, and you mentioned them in the sports update. We should get to some of these here.
Yeah, so we mentioned, and hard to tell if he wasn't in the building today. So, but you're listing both ankle and pec. So, talking about Terrell Bernard. Terrell Bernard left that game danger because of the ankle. So that to me is the big one. But we had Dorian Williams practicing on a limited basis. We have the rest of the injury report here. Not practicing today, Samuel and Smoot, along with Daquan Jones, but Daquan Jones just gave him the day off. Here's all the guys that are limited. Carter, okay. DeMar Hamlin's got an ankle. Mac Hollins a shoulder. Taron Johnson a forearm. Dalton Kincaid collarbone. And we mentioned Williams practicing fully today. Quentin Morris, as well as they list Josh Allen still with the left hand. I guess they have to list
and
that.
Having Taron Johnson in there with the forearm. Okay, these are pre-existing injuries from earlier, but these guys have been playing, and they're probably going to continue to play, and they're just going to continue to monitor these injuries.
Again, I mean, I wouldn't expect Curtis Samuel to be out there, but okay, fine. You could just dress 4, call up a receiver on the practice squad if you feel like it. I'm concerned about the linebackers, and that will continue to be my concern. Tomorrow, hey, you're kind of in the dark about the Seahawks, so are we. Locked On host Corbin Smith will be joining us at 4:30 tomorrow from the Pacific Northwest, and we'll learn a little bit more about this team that, let's be honest, they're in first place, but they are erratic, okay? Yes, you pointed out the Giants game. They didn't show up against the Niners on a Thursday night, a short week. They needed overtime to beat the Patriots.
Yikes.
Yeah. But then again, hey, we walloped Atlanta. So what team are we facing here? Let's find out together tomorrow, 4:30.
We all woke up to the breaking news of a trade in the NFL. We're just under 2 weeks away from the trade deadline, and teams with needs are making moves. The Bills made theirs last week, obviously, with the addition of Amari Cooper. And the Kansas City Chiefs find themselves in need of a wide receiver as well. In fact, so much so, they reached out to you, Gino, and said, hey, come on with us here on Kansas City Sports Talk Radio and talk about Cooper, because we're pissed that we didn't get him. We want a wide receiver.
Well, the way Binkley phrased it, the fans here aren't, but we in Kansas City, we're going to be fine with Patrick Mahomes. And okay,
he might be right.
He might be right.
You get DeAndre Hopkins today.
You go through the exercise and you look at the Chiefs' schedule and you're like, wow, at worst, they're 14-3, maybe 13-4. Yeah, they're going to be certainly coasting into the postseason. DeAndre Hopkins, he's washed. He's beyond his best. Surprising to learn that last year, with crappy quarterback play in Tennessee, let's be honest, 75 receptions went over 1,000 yards last year for the Titans. Now, watching him this past week, I'm like, that guy is even trying at this point, but maybe that was his secret way of getting out. He just didn't show anything against the Bills. So can he bring something in? Of course. Of course he's going to show something for Kansas City, but I'm not concerned. I would have been more concerned if it were Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp would be a better fit, no question about it. But Hopkins, this season, certainly hasn't been a factor. You could question whether or not the effort was there this season in Tennessee, and does he find does he rejuvenate his production with Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball? Maybe. But I would listen to the person who says that he's washed up. I wouldn't completely dismiss that. At minimum, I think with Hopkins, like you got with Cooper and the Bills, I think at minimum he makes everybody around him a little bit better. It makes it a little bit easier for Mahomes to find open guys when you've got to pay attention to what DeAndre Hopkins is doing on the field.
Yeah, and in the what's the cost here? If everything goes well for Kansas City, it's going to be a 4th rounder. I mean, Kansas City
60% of the snaps in a Super Bowl appearance for that to become a 4th rounder.
Considering that you gave up a 3rd for lousy Kadarius Toney, I mean, this is where the market is this year. You know?
I view this deal similar to the 2022 deal that brought MVS to the Chiefs. And can you get that out of Hopkins? Yeah, I think you can get that production out of Hopkins with relative ease. So it's DeAndre Hopkins with the Titans paying about half of his remaining salary this season going to Kansas City for a conditional 4th-round pick.
Isn't that funny, though? Like when MVS was sitting out there, we were all being snarky, like he's going to end up back in Kansas City. He didn't. Like if you missed it, he went to New Orleans. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, New Orleans needs wide receivers.
Tampa,
your move, Tampa. And if Cooper Kupp is out there, is somebody willing to give up that 2nd-round price tag? I think that's going to be a fascinating thing to watch here as we approach the trade deadline now less than 2 weeks away.
So tell me about this Tom Brady thing. So this week, all right, so if there's ever a time where you would want to sync up the fan and watch the Bills game, which you can do, I would think maybe Brownie and Eric Wood and Sal might be more fitting for you than listen to Tom Brady. Wow, yeah, Josh Allen, he's really good. I'm here to point out the obvious. Great, Tom Brady's on the broadcast this Sunday.
So if you didn't know about this story, and this is something we've talked about a couple of times in the past, with Tom Brady in the booth and now as a part owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, Brady can't attend the normal production meetings or practices as part of his responsibilities for Fox. He can't even enter team facilities.
Yeah, okay. Full stop. That makes sense. Like Tom Brady, he's covering the Chiefs this week, shouldn't be able to go. I'm just saying in theory. Like, you shouldn't be able to go and watch practice and get that intel. I'm sorry. There is a conflict of interest. Can we all agree on that?
I agree with that. I also think that this is true, that not having that access, not being able to go through the production and the prep that every other broadcaster goes through before their game prevents him from being the best that he can possibly be at the job that he is doing. And if you believe everything that Tom Brady says, well, he wants to be the best at everything he does, right? So he's doing this job for Fox, presumably with one hand tied behind his back. Hey, you've got the name, you know the game, but you can't do all the things that all the other broadcasters do because you have this conflict of interest. Now, he might be okay with all of that, and Tom Brady now as a retired ex-NFL player might appreciate that the workload has been lessened for him and he doesn't have to prepare as much as he used to on a Sunday. And maybe that's why everything's playing out the way it's playing out. But there's also this, and this is where the Bills come in. The Bills wanted to talk to Tom Brady. Like everybody's going to come and talk to the Bills and do their prep like they would normally do, but the Bills actually wanted to talk to Brady in advance of the game against Seattle on Sunday, and the league stepped in and said, no, you can't do that.
Okay.
The Bills are willing to have Tom Brady come in. They're not worried about Tom Brady learning something about their team and sharing it with the Raiders. The rules are there to protect teams against Brady, the owner of another team, having a duty to do anything he can to help the team that he owns. But the Bills didn't care about that. They still wanted to talk to him. And if they have no problem with that, if the Bills have no problem with that, well, then why would the league step in and say no?
Where is the line with this? Because if you're Tom Brady, how many former players text you? Like your former teammates, like Mike Evans might text him or something like that.
Sure.
Or like, is he not allowed to talk to his friends and teammates in this league? Look, Brady put himself in this position.
Now, here's the double standard. Last weekend, before he called the Chiefs, Brady went to the Chiefs team hotel to interview Patrick Mahomes before the Super Bowl rematch in San Francisco.
How is that allowed?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That was okay, but nobody knows why that was okay and why the Bills saying, yeah, bring Tom Brady. No, you can't do that.
Okay. I didn't they do that charity golf thing? I would think maybe Brady might have texted Mahomes. So if you just set it up yourself individually, who's going to stop those two guys? And Mahomes, I'm sure, isn't.
Brady has a relationship with Josh Allen.
So
right.
Yeah. So like when Josh gets into Seattle, like, hey, Josh, you want to meet for coffee? Sure. Imagine that.
there are whispers and rumors around the league that there aren't any actual rules or policies on this, that they're kind of making it up as they go. That it obviously would make sense that you would want to keep an owner of a team away from another team to gather information before they do their side job.
Well, what's the rule? No, there is. Okay, just in reverse. The rule is this. We're Fox or CBS. It is written in the broadcast contract that you have this time. Like, they negotiate this danger. You want to put out the best broadcast? We need to prepare for this. So that's part of the media deal, that we're going to get the coach of the half. We're going to be able to have a player now pregame, and we're going to be able to do the prep. So that's part of this. But in reverse is what you're saying. Under what circumstances would this not happen? And when Brady signs on with Fox, that was the NFL, which could hit the override button on any of these announcers, by the way, which they do. They're kind of toggling that because they love to have Brady in there, but they know, you're a rival of the Raiders. You're not going to be Tom Brady's not entering your locker room.
I think a couple things. I think the league is absolutely making this up as they go, and I think Tom Brady is dictating to the league what he wants to do, and the league's just okay with it.
I think Tom Brady, for you and me and sports bar listeners, he's terrible. Okay, he is not telling you things you don't want to know. Could he improve? Of course, anybody can improve, but he's not there for that reason.
Well, he's not putting in the work.
No, but once he's on TV, I'm sure, whoa, it's Tom Brady. Like, middle America or people that just kind of casually love football, they're totally fine with it.
Yeah, I believe that the league is making it up as they go, and I also believe that Brady is actually okay with them stepping in and using this as a reason to not put in the prep, not put in the work. These restrictions actually give him an easy excuse to avoid doing it. Let's face it. I mean, you want to avoid a meeting with anybody from Buffalo? Well, if I can't, I'm part owner of the Raiders, and I would love to do it. But if Brady wants to do an interview Mahomes, the NFL isn't going to have a problem with that. That's two of the biggest names and stars.
But if I'm Andy Reid, wouldn't you say, hey, dude, we're playing the Raiders in 2 weeks. What are we?
What is right? Yeah. But what is really going to happen? What is Brady going to get from Mahomes in an interview that could potentially help the Raiders 2 weeks later?
Nothing. Right. But if Brady shows up and watches Chiefs practice, that would be something.
I think if he wants to do it, he will do it. And the things that he doesn't want to do, he's going to hide behind a rule that may not exist that prevents him from doing the things that he should be doing to be better at his job.
866-4FAN, 866-4326. Tom Brady on the Bills call coming up on the TV Sunday. Our buddy Steven Victor. Hey, Steve, welcome.
Hey, fellas. So, Brady doesn't have any history of cheating in the NFL, though, right?
That's a good point, Steve.
He's never done anything wrong.
That's right. We should trust him implicitly.
Played football.
No.
Come on. He's never done anything wrong. He wouldn't cheat by going in the Raiders facility and or the Chiefs facility and trying to get a step up for his team.
It's a great point.
It just seems a little suspect, and I think the NFL should kind of hamper him on doing anything because of his history alone.
I think what we've said is what remains true. Steve, you're the best. Thanks for calling in and pointing that out. He's absolutely right. You've said it. I've said it. All right, make up your mind, dude. What's it going to be? You're going to be a broadcaster, you're going to be an owner. Okay, you're now an owner. This experiment needs to end. Fox needs to put a cap in it, and it needs to end. Put Olsen back on the top crew. It was fun while it lasted, but you're doing yourself a disservice, and he doesn't want to do it.
If I am a Raider fan, I am not happy with this whatsoever. Your team right now is a mess. Pierce is doing what he can, but you don't have a quarterback. You don't have a lot of things. You have a tight end, but you don't have a lot. You are in full rebuild mode. Tom Brady should be qualified right now to be sitting down with the personnel department and saying, let's find our next quarterback and figure out a plan how to get him. But no, you can't be doing that when
you're a partial owner. You would think that he would have an interest in that.
What are you doing there?
Yeah.
Why are you there?
Right.
Or is this just another one of those investments?
I just don't want to work. Maybe he's got a little Jake Cutler in him. Like, I worked my ass off as a player, and now I'm not really looking for more work.
By the way, that's fine. However, you made that commitment. You owe it to the Raider fans here to help straighten this out.
Well, he also owes it to the viewers of Fox who tune into these games expecting it to be watchable.
It's not good. He's not good as an analyst. Greg Olson, superior. I mean, if we're going to do our power rankings on who the best color guy is, you're putting Collinsworth ahead of him, of course. That's coming out of my mouth.
I know. I just thought it was funny. When the Bills reached out, they were basically rebuffed. No, he can't do that. But he got to interview Mahomes. Why? His schedule allowed? They're golfing buddies? I think they're making it up as they go along. I think it needs to come to an end.
Do we brace on Sunday for the Tom Brady snarky comment about his success against Buffalo over the years?
I don't know about that. I'm trying to think of what would lead to that. And I can't come up with a scenario that would lead to that. Like,
it's I don't know if Fox does this per se, but they always do the stupid animated stuff.
Sure.
Coming out of commercial break, here's Tom Brady to Gronk. And did you know, up until Josh Allen, since the year 2000, the winningest quarterback in Orchard Park was Tom Brady with 17 wins.
Yeah, I mean, that feels like they would wedge that in. It would be like a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't really have any relevance to the game that we're watching. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to think of a scenario where they could say
somebody throws a toy.
That would work. That would work. Seattle, listen, 12s, you have your marching orders. Throw Brady's dong out onto the field, and now we've got a connection. He needs to go. It needs to stop. Go be the partial owner of the Raiders and give us Greg Olson back in the booth where he belongs, with the top team, where he belongs.
He's an owner, and we joke that, owners are aliens because they live this alternate life.
Yeah.
He actually looks like an alien. I know it's like, low-hanging fruit to talk about somebody's appearance, but just like him in a suit these days.
I can't say anything, Gene. Neither you or I are on the cover of GQ, and we're not runway models, so I'm not going to. I'm going to leave his appearance. I'm going to leave his appearance alone and just say he probably lives a healthier lifestyle than both of us combined by far. But yes, I mean he's his overall. The overall job that he's done so far on Fox, I would say, is akin to what we saw growing up when Joe Montana went to the booth. It just doesn't feel or sound or look natural. It doesn't feel right. We got to get to a round of shots next on The Fan.
Yeah, as the team we don't talk enough about, or excuse me, we haven't. The team that plays in Buffalo, we'll get to them. They won last night.
The S word.
Yeah. They won last night. A baseball icon passing away. We'll set you up for the NBA tonight. If you're a Syracuse fan, something closed on the hill. We'll tell you about that. And a good friend of the show today with a very high honor. We'll have that story.
We'll get to that and more next. A round of shots coming up. And last call before 6 o'clock. You can have the final say in the sports bar. 866-4326, the phone number, 585-866-4FAN.
Sports Update.
On those injured Bills linebackers, middle linebacker Terrell Bernard was excused today for a personal reason, but he is dealing with ankle and pectoral injuries. Dorian Williams practiced on a limited basis, not practicing for the Bills today. Curtis Samuel, Duwan Smooth, Daquan Jones given a Veterans Day of rest. Sean McDermott on the D-line.
True every week. Every week it's a must. You know, that's how the game is. That's where the game is won every week, up front and defensive line, offensive line. You know, being great with our technique, being great with the strain. You know, you talk about their defensive line. They've got some guys that can flat out rush the passer, and very impressed by the tape.
That trade for DeAndre Hopkins has gone through. Kansas City gets him from Tennessee, a 5th-round pick for a 4th. Could be a conditional 4th. The Amherst tonight taking on Cleveland. Gene Battaglia, the Fan, Rochester.
The only way to take the Fan Rochester with you is the free Odyssey app. Download it today and follow the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Over 2.5 hours, and we didn't even mention the S word.
Yeah, this newcomer Ryan McLeod scored his 4th consecutive game. You know what's funny about this, Danger? They're in a wild card position.
End the season.
That's it.
We're done. We've seen enough. That's a good run, NHL.
Stop the count, as they would say.
The streak is over. The drought is over for the Sabres.
UPL made 27 saves. He's still good. Homestand continuing Saturday when Detroit comes in. It will also mark, Danger, the first time the Sabres wear the black and red go-ahead uniform.
That'll make all the difference in the world. I will say, and I did watch last night, going into the game, I didn't think there was any chance. I'm like, oh, God, they're starting Ottinger. The Stars are getting healthier. We've seen what the Stars have done to the Sabres before. I mean, like, the Stars put it on the Sabres last year. And the Tage Thompson goal from last night, if you didn't see it, if you have the chance, check the highlight of the Tage Thompson goal. It was magic. It was special. It was a special goal. It was straight heat. And it's the kind of thing you expect Tage Thompson to do with regularity. But the way it was set up, the crisp passing, the unbelievable finish, I just looked at him like, that's heat. If they can do that with consistency, then we might have something here.
That's why Don Granato is a good head coach. For years and years, like, this isn't working. Let's try him at center.
Right.
It's like, yeah, you created a star in this league. Speaking of stars, baseball losing an icon. Fernando Valenzuela passing as a 20-year-old rookie. He started the season 8-0, 0.50 ERA. Fernando Mania, the story of baseball in 1981. He was the first player to win the Rookie of the Year and the Cy Young in the same season. He would pitch 17 years in the majors, and he actually had a brief stint with the Red Wings in 1993. His number 34 was retired just last year. No official cause of death was given, although we do know he was battling cancer. Fernando Valenzuela was only 63.
Now, kind of like Riley, who joined us last hour of the Barreled Up podcast, I was pretty young when Fernando Mania hit, but I do have memories of Fernando in 81. I would have been 6. Here's why I remember. A couple of things. One, I don't know which fast food chain or whoever it was that was partnering with Major League Baseball at the time, but I remember I had a Fernando Valenzuela plastic tumbler with his image on it, and I can't remember what restaurant was handing it out. But the thing I remember more about Fernando Valenzuela is he took over. He was just such a big part of the culture of 1981. Like, if you looked at 1981 in the capsule, Fernando is a big, big part of it. My mom's favorite baseball player. My mom doesn't know anything about baseball. She's from Spain and just gravitated towards Fernando Valenzuela, the Venezuelan baseball player who she just immediately fell in love with and said, that's my favorite baseball player. And I just remember my mom, who's not into baseball at all, being into baseball because Fernando was on the Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, I was around for that. That's a slight difference between you and I. And as a kid watching this, I wasn't a Dodger fan, but my gosh, he looked like a kid out. He was this chubby kid from Mexico that was doing this out there. Like, how is this even possible? And I mentioned this last hour when we were talking to Jim because hey, you get a Dodgers-Yankees World Series. Last time we had that, 1981. The Dodgers get there. They beat Montreal. Everybody gives the credit to Rick Monday, as they should, right? He hits the home run, Blue Monday for the Expos. Fernando was spectacular that day, allowing just the one run. They don't even get to the ninth inning if it's not for Fernando. So tough loss for the baseball world. See how the Dodgers honor him. Of course, the Dodgers with the home field in the World Series, Game 1 on Friday night. The Celtics tied an NBA record by hitting 29 three-pointers in their win over the Knicks. And yes, Bronny James did play with his dad last night. James Jr. missing an open three in LA's win over Minnesota.
Because he's not an NBA player. Sorry. Continue.
10 games in the NBA tonight. Hey, I would have said the same thing. Doubleheader on ESPN as the Bucks and Sixers, although Philly without Paul George and Joel Embiid.
That's fun. Does ESPN get a refund on their TV deal for that? Like, I would be pissed if I'm a Disney executive. Hey, he stood those guys up. What are we doing here? We paid a lot of money for this deal, and you're giving us an opening night without your stars? Get out of here.
Feels like a missed opportunity for baseball tonight, right? That's like Game 1 of the World Series, like you could have done this tonight. Suns and Clippers will be the late game.
Okay.
Everyone is okay down in Carolina. Panther quarterback Andy Dalton, around this time yesterday, car accident. Dalton's wife, 3 children, and the dog were in the car when this happened in Southeast Charlotte. Nobody from Dalton's family required any emergency assistance.
He's obviously shook, though. He's not going to start at quarterback this weekend for the Panthers. It's going to be Bryce Young.
Is that's such a good idea? Like, they've already named this just based on his unavailability to practice today? I don't know.
I think if you're Carolina right now, what more do you have to lose? Like, is it going to get worse with Bryce Young? Or can you at least maybe start the rebuilding process of trying to get something out of him? Does it matter if you lose by 10 or 20 or 40? You're losing no matter what.
Yeah, it's a team right now that should be picking up the top. I don't know if it's going to be them or if it's going to be actually New England, yeah.
Yeah.
Who does Carolina get? I'm looking this way. Everybody's playing this week. They go to Denver.
That's right.
425. Will not be paying any attention to the game. If you're a Syracuse fan, a Syracuse grad, maybe someone that just likes going to the games, you go to the Hill, right? You walk up the Hill. A familiar shop is closing down. Shirt World is a store that opened on the Hill in 1976. They sold SU gear. That was one of the places you would go. I guess it's a sign of the times. More people are shopping online. Manny's being the other independent retailer. They're still there.
What's the pizza place that's up there on the hill?
Varsity
Pizza.
Varsity Slices or whatever. Yeah, just get the slice there.
That's the spot I know. Look, I have not spent nearly enough time. Didn't go to Syracuse, obviously, and only have gone a handful of games and kind of take the orange for granted, I guess. You could pin me in that category and say, well. But, yeah, Varsity is I remember staggering into that place late at night and enjoying a slice with some friends.
Yeah, Kyle and I try to go, my son and I, once a year, but it's kind of tough, right? Especially like a weeknight game. Hey, go to the Amerks tonight. No problem. You get home in a normal hour. I drive from Syracuse, especially like an 8 o'clock game. I'm like,
Yeah. I feel the same way about the Sabres. Like, I keep telling myself, like, we love the Amerks, and you're right. It's easy and convenient to go to a local game. But if you want to see the pro thing, like we have it on, we have college athletics in Syracuse that are Division I and nationally recognized, and we have the Sabres and the Bills, obviously, and the Bills are different because it's on a weekend. But like I keep telling myself, I got to go to more Sabres games. Every time I go, I'm like, I got to go to more. And life gets in the way, I suppose.
That's it. Just make time for yourself. Syracuse football, by the way, in action tomorrow night at Pitt. Finally, congratulations to a good friend of the show, the icon, Mike Catalana, 13 Wham today, being inducted into the New York State Broadcasters Hall of Fame. Amongst those who made the trek down, Jenna Cottrell, Doug Embledge, Don Elhart, Dan Fates will join us tomorrow.
His whole team.
Yeah, they all went down there and got a table. That ceremony taking place in Manhattan today at the Rainbow Room.
Tell me about the Rainbow Room.
You don't know the Rainbow Room?
I don't know that I do.
Okay, what is the movie? The Tom Hanks movie with Meg Ryan where
When Harry Met Sally.
No.
You've Got Mail.
You've Got Mail. Like, and they look and there's the heart.
You've Got Mail is, I'm sorry, Harry Met Sally's Billy Crystal. Tom Hanks is You've Got Mail. Yeah.
You've Got Mail.
Okay.
That's the one.
Never
where
watched.
Okay, no. It's like it's in the Rockefeller, so the same building that has NBC. You go all the way up to the top, and it was open for a while, closed down. I guess it's back reopened, but I would just ask this. Where does the New York State Broadcasters Association get all this money?
Don't ask those questions, Gene. We're in the New York State broadcast.
I'm never going to win.
Don't ask
never
those.
Never going to win.
Well, not now. You're not. Not if you're trying to spill the dirt. Shh. Don't ask those questions. The New York State Broadcasters Association would ask politely that you stay out of their affairs.
Like a mob.
Don't bring it up. Stop looking around. Stop looking for answers.
The mob.
Don't look into it, Gene. This is why Catalana gets recognized and we don't. He doesn't ask these kind of questions.
I would just say this. I can report that Mike Kennedy flew him down, table for 10.
He deserves it.
Rainbow room.
He deserves it. We're not going to get that treatment now because you're asking questions you shouldn't be asking. They don't want to know. They don't want you to know where the bodies are buried. I'm sorry, where how they're making their funds, how they're making their bottom line work. Don't ask those questions, Gene. We're never going to be in that same rarefied air.
It's got to be some line on some budget somewhere.
Let's get nominated first. Can we get a nomination for anything ever?
I can't even get a first pitch out of the innovative field.
Sad state of affairs in the sports bar, really is. We need to start advocating for ourselves. We need to campaign for ourselves.
No,
is that what?
I
refuse?
No, I refuse to do that.
Too much pride.
No, not too much pride. Too busy.
Too busy. You'd make time if it was important.
Of course.
A prestigious award. If you got invited to the Rainbow Room, what are you going to do?
Oh, well,
are you going to big time them? I'm too busy, guys. Can't make it. Sorry.
We are not going into the New York State Broadcasters Hall of Fame. John Murphy also went in today.
Oh, he deserves it. Yeah, that's good. I mean, we've been at this a while. You and I, 8 years, but we've been broadcasters for our entire adult life. What are we talking about?
That's true.
Let's not sell ourselves short here. Let's get that nomination. I'm on a campaign. I'm on a mission.
Let's just win the candy dish or whatever they.
I want the candy dish. At minimum, the candy dish. I mean, all we have to show for it is the stupid wooden spoon for me winning the chili cook-off.
Or doesn't the AP do something like this? The AP Sportscast of the Year. Send it in.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah. We're gonna start campaigning. We're gonna take a break. Come back. Last call is next. 866-432-6585-866-4FAN. If you want to pull up a stool.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. On 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester. Our Amerks are in action tonight at 7:05 on 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester. The sports leader, 95.7. On the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
They're fast. They're really dangerous. They can hurt you off the rush. They're really good on the power play, and they can put you in some really tough spots if you don't manage the game well.
This is Rochester Americans head coach Mike Leone talking about his opponent tonight at Blue Cross Arena. The Cleveland Monsters are in town, the first of a home and home.
The series that I wanted to happen last year. Remember they won, Cleveland won, then that would have been the opponent.
Yeah, would have been great.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have the opportunity to see Cleveland for the first time this season, and you'll be able to hear that game on the Fan Rochester. Our coverage gets underway here at 7 o'clock.
Something we haven't brought up, Robert Saleh has a new job.
Get out of here.
He is joining the staff in Green Bay.
Makes sense.
What is his role? It's all they'll say is it's fluid. So, like, you're not going to change coordinators. They're a winning team, but he's buddies with Matt LaFleur, so why not bring him in and be an extra set of eyes there?
Kind of interesting. I also found it interesting that Ken Dorsey took over offensive play calling from Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland with Jameis Winston now behind center. I wonder what that means long term, if anything, for Stefanski.
I think that's actually a smart move by Stefanski. Like, he's got a lot. I don't think Cleveland's. Am I crazy for thinking that at 1-6 they're not dead?
I guess it depends how much faith you have in Jameis Winston.
It's going to be fun.
It'll at minimum it'll be fun. For as much as, like, in the fantasy world, you love Jameis Winston because he doesn't care. He's just going to wing it, throw it all over the place. But when it comes to actual wins and losses, that you can be a little reckless, and those turnovers obviously don't always play well in the NFL. Fun show this afternoon, and if you missed any of it, we invite you to check out the Sports Bar wherever you get your podcasts. Just search out the Sports Bar, and that includes the free-to-download Odyssey app, our home online, AUDACY, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your shows. PJ Glasser gave us his best bets for college and pro football this weekend, and Jim Riley of the Barreled Up podcast shared his preview of the World Series getting underway on Friday. Tomorrow on the show, our buddy Dan Fates. Is he checking in from the Rainbow Room with Ken Lund?
He'll be back in time.
All right, very good. Dan Fates, 13 Web Sports, BuffaloPlus.com at 3:25 at 4:30. From the Locked On Seahawks podcast, our buddy Corbin Smith lets us know what's happening in Seattle. JR Sport Brief next. Amherst Hockey at 7. Have a great night. The Fan Rochester.